Chapter 581. The Comet system looked a bit like a mobile phone system. It was a little strange to use. It used the mouse and keyboard to control the program. Sometimes, due to the logic conflicts, Poplar Fruit was confused. For example, clicking the right mouse button would bring up the menu, and double-clicking the left mouse button would open the program. But on the Comet system, he only needed to click the left mouse button to open the program, and clicking the right mouse button would return him to the desktop. What made Poplar Fruit feel even more helpless was that he needed to long press the left mouse button to call up the corresponding system menu. When he first started fiddling with it, Poplar Fruit often returned to the desktop and accidentally opened programs that he didn't want to open. After finally understanding the operating logic of the system, Poplar Fruit realized that there wasn't much software in the system. It seemed that Kai Simin also understood that the computer's configuration was too low to handle complicated work, so she didn't install any games or software in it. So far, the only software that Poplar Fruit could find was the WPS 3-piece set that Kai Simin had transplanted herself, as well as the browser, QQ, and music player software. It was so simple that it was crude. This made Poplar Fruit doubt its practicality. Although it could meet the minimum requirements for people to chat online, it didn't even have a video player. How was Poplar Fruit going to play videos for the children? Luckily, Poplar Fruit had the foresight to summon his own computer expert, Fat Dragon. It was best to leave these professional tests to the professionals. Fat Dragon had already taken the train yesterday morning, and would probably arrive at the city's train station in the afternoon. Poplar Fruit would pick him up then. But before that, the computers were only stored in the school. Poplar Fruit had no interest in fiddling with them. Xiongkahu didn't care as much as Poplar Fruit. He valued these strange-looking machines very much. For the old man, even though he didn't understand, he had already determined that these machines were the hope of the children in the village to leave the mountains. Therefore, last night, Xiongkahu had moved the bedding to the school. He was worried about others and wanted to guard it himself. Early in the morning, Poplar Fruit was practicing his swordsmanship on the mountain. He didn't see Xiongkahu come up until 6 o'clock. He thought that something had happened to his master. Poplar Fruit anxiously ran back to the village. It was only at the entrance of the school that he saw Xiongkahu calmly sitting on a small stool drinking tea. "You're here?" Xiongkahu waved his hand and said with a smile, "Come and have some tea." Poplar Fruit was speechless as he said, "I'm not drinking anymore. I still have to go back and take care of my child. Master, why didn't you come up the mountain today?" "You gave me a fright. I was worried that something might have happened to you while you were sleeping outside. I forgot to tell you, hee." Xiongkahu didn't feel guilty at all. He said casually, "Don't worry. When I was fighting in the southwest jungle, I was fine even if I slept in the mud. How can it be the same as when you were young?" Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he said, "You can't do this. I'm going to the city to pick someone up today. Do you want to buy a big lock? A lock can only guard against a gentleman, not a villain." Xiongkahu raised his eyes and said, "Let's do this first. I'll think of something else." Unable to persuade him, Poplar Fruit could only go back with his saber. They slept very early last night. When Poplar Fruit came back, Zheng Yujie was already tossing and turning in bed. Kiki was also barefooted and jumping on the bed. The two of them were very noisy. "How did you sleep last night?" Poplar Fruit walked in and asked with a smile. "Hayan." Zheng Yujie didn't care about Poplar Fruit at all. Lying on the bed, she stretched her body without caring about her image. Under the thin t-shirt, her curves were exquisite. Poplar Fruit couldn't take his eyes off her. "I haven't slept so well in a long time," Zheng Yujie murmured. "I've never seen an official's son work as hard as you." Poplar Fruit twirled his saber, changed the Miaodao from a forward grip to a reverse grip, and then prepared to put it back on the top of the cabinet. "Hey, wait. Let me see." Zheng Yujie suddenly got up from the bed and shouted. Poplar Fruit thought that she was curious about the Miaodao in his hand, so he turned around and handed it to her. In the end, Zheng Yujie didn't take it. Instead, she looked at Poplar Fruit with shining eyes, as if she was looking at a rare animal. Poplar Fruit felt a little uncomfortable. He asked speechlessly, "What are you looking at?" "I'm looking at you." Zheng Yujie crawled over. She knelt on the bed, straightened her upper body, and gently patted Poplar Fruit's chest. She smiled and said, "You look quite handsome when you're holding a saber." Indeed, Poplar Fruit's face lines were more robust. He belonged to the sunny type of man. The short jacket he was wearing today was more retro. Coupled with the two miaodao, he looked like a hero in a period film. Although Zheng Yujia's words were bold and hot, she was still an inexperienced girl. She could feel the thick and elastic texture of his hand, which made her cheeks turn bright red. Poplar Fruit was startled by her. He jumped back and looked at her speechlessly. "Big sister, stop fooling around. There's a kid here." Zheng Yujia turned her head and looked at Kiki, who was looking at the two of them in confusion. She chuckled. She turned around and threw herself at Kiki. "By the way, didn't you say you prepared a birthday present for me?" Zheng Yujia suddenly remembered. Yesterday, she was so busy with the new computers that when she came back, she was so tired that she didn't remember such an important thing. Poplar Fruit scratched his head guiltily and said with a dry smile, "Isn't the birthday present given on the birthday?" "That won't do." Zheng Yujia stretched out her hand and said, "I want to check the goods first. If I'm not satisfied, you'll have to make another one." This proud look, no matter how long her hair was, couldn't change. Poplar Fruit had to take out his school bag and take the wooden carving. "You made it yourself?" Zheng Yujia was overjoyed. She took it and looked at the chubby little wooden carving with a smile. From the appearance, it was still far from a real handicraft. However, Poplar Fruit's affirmative answer made her smile so much that she couldn't close her mouth. "Papa made a little pig for Auntie." Kiki also came over from Zheng Yujia's arm. She pouted and said, "It's better than Kiki's. Little pig." If Kiki didn't say it, Zheng Yujia wouldn't have noticed that this chubby wooden carving really looked like a little fat pig. Zheng Yujia suddenly raised her head and said angrily, "Hey, Poplar Fruit, what do you mean by this? You carved a pig for my birthday?" Poplar Fruit scratched his head and didn't dare to look into Zheng Yujia's eyes. He said with a dry smile, "Yes, aren't you born in the year of the pig?" "You're born in the year of the pig." Zheng Yujia suddenly jumped up. She jumped in front of Poplar Fruit and punched Poplar Fruit with her two pink fists. "I'm born in the year of the rabbit, okay? You didn't carve such a cute little rabbit, but you made a pig." Chapter 582. The Land Rover drove on the bumpy mountain road, and still maintained a good sense of balance. Poplar Fruit secretly looked at the rearview mirror. Zheng Yujia didn't care about him at all. Instead, she was playing happily with Kiki in the back. In this regard, Poplar Fruit could only smile bitterly. "Who asked me to provoke her?" It was impossible for Poplar Fruit to remember Zheng Yujia's zodiac wrongly. At that time, what he said to Zheng Yujia in the house was just Poplar Fruit's sophistry. The actual situation was that Poplar Fruit really didn't know how to sculpt a little rabbit. After a few consecutive failures, Poplar Fruit found that the only thing he could sculpt was the little pig that Kiki mentioned. When he sculpted a dog, it looked like a pig. When he sculpted a rabbit, it also looked like a pig. There wasn't much time left. Poplar Fruit finally gave up and sculpted a pig directly. Needless to say, Poplar Fruit's final product was pretty good. At least this little pig was honest and cute. It looked decent. However, Zheng Yujia wasn't satisfied. She grabbed Poplar Fruit and asked him to sculpt a little rabbit for her. Even if it was her birthday, it didn't matter if he made it up in the future. Poplar Fruit had some complaints in his heart. It's okay to ask for too much. If you don't like the little pig, why did you take it back and hide it? This behavior was even worse than Kiki's. "Hey, Poplar Fruit, why didn't you mention your friend before?" Zheng Yujia came over and patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder. "Is it another beauty?" When Poplar Fruit came out to pick up Fat Dragon, he didn't want to bring Zheng Yujia because he wanted to give Fat Dragon a heads up. Since Fat Dragon had only seen Fang Bei, he was afraid that Fat Dragon would think too much and say something that would embarrass everyone. But Zheng Yujia insisted on following, and her reason was very good. "You can't leave me alone in this scary mountain." Poplar Fruit couldn't refuse. No. Poplar Fruit's head dropped a drop of cold sweat. He shook his head and said, "A big fatty is more like it. How can there be a beauty?" "Then why don't you dare to bring me? There must be a problem." Zheng Yujia nodded suspiciously. Just as the two were joking around, the 2.5-hour drive ended in a short while. The city was more prosperous than Lidong's poor county, and there were fewer Miao people here. What they could hear was familiar Mandarin, which made Zheng Yujie feel like she had returned to the human world. "Where is your friend?" Zheng Yujie leaned on the car window and looked out with Kiki. In the end, it was difficult to find Fat Dragon's shadow in the crowd. "Kiki can't see Uncle Fat either," Kiki shouted. "No need to look for him, he's in the nibbling chicken opposite." Poplar Fruit laughed. If they wanted Fat Dragon to stand on the crowded street on such a hot day and wait for people, it would be better to take his life. When they were refueling on the road, Poplar Fruit called him to ask, "I'm starting to believe that he's a big fatty," Zheng Yujie said happily. The car stopped temporarily on the side of the road. Poplar Fruit turned around and asked, "Do you two want to eat something?" "I don't eat this junk food." Zheng Yujie waved her hand. Although her life was not very regular, she was still very particular about food. She never ate fast food like fried chicken, French fries and other fast food. "Why don't I buy you 2 sundaes? Kiki likes ice cream." Poplar Fruit laughed. "Ice cream?" Kiki's eyes lit up. She sat back hard, then held her hands in front of her and said excitedly, Yes, Kiki wants to eat ice cream." "Then you two wait for me in the car." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "I'll pick him up and buy you sundaes." After a while, the door of the nibbling chicken was pushed open again. Walking in front was a burly fat man. He was holding a colorful sundae in one hand, and kept licking the one in his left hand. Kiki, who had sharp eyes, saw it at a glance. She pointed at the fat man and Zheng Yujie and shouted, "Uncle Fat! Uncle Fat!" That's right, this big fatty was Fatty Long. He moved his butt away, and Poplar Fruit, who was dragging a suitcase behind him, appeared in Zheng Yujie's sight. "That's Papa." Kiki was addicted to playing the game of finding people. She had just warned Fat Dragon in the nibbling chicken restaurant, so that he was mentally prepared. However, when Fat Dragon opened the door of the passenger seat and saw Zheng Yujie sitting behind, his eyes still flashed. He didn't greet Zheng Yujie, and even ignored Kiki, who called him Uncle Fat. He directly slammed the door and ran to the back to find Poplar Fruit, where the luggage was. "Gua," Fat Dragon shouted excitedly. Fuck, the friend you're talking about is a beauty." After all, he was an otaku. Fat Dragon's appearance made Poplar Fruit feel a little embarrassed. He pushed Fat Dragon and said speechlessly, "Can you be a little more mature? Look at you drooling, I'm going to be scared by you." "Hee Gua, don't worry, I have a wife, I won't fight with you." Fat Dragon pulled Poplar Fruit, not letting him rush to open the door, and then whispered in Poplar Fruit's ear, "I was wondering why you didn't want to come back on the mountain. So it's because you have a beauty with you. TSK, you're like Luadu, you're too happy to think about home, right? You're thinking too much, really." Poplar Fruit wanted to slap his head. "I'm doing serious business on the mountain, and she just came yesterday." "Then you admit it." Fat Dragon laughed. "But what about my daughter's friend in Yangcheng? Did she fly away?" Poplar Fruit rolled his eyes and said, "Fly away? That's my girlfriend. This is my good friend, a pure boyfriend and girlfriend relationship, do you understand? There's no such thing as a pure boyfriend and girlfriend relationship in this world. I didn't study much, so don't lie to me." Fat Dragon said with a wretched smile. "Aya, you're a man, I understand. It doesn't matter how many boats you want to step on. Just hurry up and bring one back for our mom to see. Understand your sister. When did you become so close to my mom?" Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he pushed him away, opened the door, then turned around and said, "Are you getting in or not? If not, I'll leave you here." Fat Dragon then ran to the front passenger seat and got in. Just now, Fat Dragon suddenly closed the door. Zheng Yujie could see the two of them whispering in the car. She didn't need to guess to know that they were talking about her. After Poplar Fruit and them got in the car, Zheng Yujie asked generously, "You're the computer expert that Poplar Fruit was talking about, right?" "Hello, my name is Zheng Yujie." Hello. My name is Longo." Longo stuttered and blushed, even though he was having a good time under the car. When he really faced Zheng Yujie, Poplar Fruit interrupted, "What's Long? Oh, you can just call him Fat Dragon." Chapter 583. The trip took nearly 6 hours. Although they left after lunch, it was already dark when they returned to Lidong County. It's so late. Are we still going to climb the mountain? Zhang Yujie looked at the dim street lights outside, and her heart was in a mess. Whether it was in the city or in the suburbs, as long as there were people, it was brightly lit. It wasn't like Lidong County. In order to save on municipal expenses, the street lights were only turned on 1 or 2 blocks apart. Hoo-hoo, I can't climb. I'm so sleepy. Fat Dragon sat in the car the whole time. He was still panting heavily. He didn't know if he was pretending or not. In any case, he made Kiki giggle. There's no rush to go back. Stay in the county for the night, and leave tomorrow morning. Poplar Fruit said. He didn't expect it to be so late. However, since he had picked up someone, he didn't need to rush. So he changed his mind halfway. He changed his route, and went to the county to find Meng Ping to stay the night. Poplar Fruit didn't go to the hotel. Instead, he drove to Meng Ping's house. It wasn't because the two had become close because of the incident at the Public Security Bureau. On the contrary, Meng Ping and Poplar Fruit were still indifferent. After that, they didn't talk on the phone. If it wasn't for Poplar Fruit suddenly wanting to know how Meng Ping was doing, he wouldn't have gone to look for trouble. Because he didn't tell him in advance, Poplar Fruit only called him when he arrived at Meng Ping's house. However, when he heard Meng Ping's muffled voice and seemed unhappy, Poplar Fruit really regretted it. He braced himself and waited downstairs. Poplar Fruit whispered to Fat Dragon and Zhang Yujie, so that they wouldn't be scared by Meng Ping's strange logic. Meng Ping was indeed in a bad mood. Seeing him come out from the shadow behind the door with a gloomy face, Kiki was so scared that she buried her head into Zhang Yujie's arms. A small ponytail stuck up between 2 proud peaks. Fat Dragon secretly swallowed twice. Since there were guests, no matter how unhappy Meng Ping was, he had to accompany them for a while. However, when Poplar Fruit mentioned his request, Meng Ping suddenly slammed the chair and exploded. Meng Ping's anger was not directed at Poplar Fruit. He scolded angrily. Don't mention this. I'm angry when you mention it. A bunch of mediocre people who will harm the country and the people. Poplar Fruit only understood what had happened after hearing Meng Ping's angry speech. Although Meng Ping wasn't optimistic about Poplar Fruit's long-distance education, his character was still very good. Since he agreed to help, he would remember it in his heart. The next day at work, Meng Ping spent the whole day researching and writing reports. In the end, just as he handed in his report, it was thrown back by the bureau chief in less than 2 minutes. Using the word thrown wasn't the right word. After all, he was a deputy bureau chief, not an ordinary staff member. However, the bureau chief's words to him weren't polite at all. He didn't even let Meng Ping sit. He directly pointed at Meng Ping's nose and scolded. If you have time, you should put more effort into your work. Don't think about taking advantage of others and don't mix with those dubious people. He scolded Meng Ping, but it didn't convince Meng Ping at all. If it was just that his report was rejected because it wasn't feasible, Meng Ping wouldn't have done that. However, the bureau chief didn't care about Meng Ping's report at all. The words that made Meng Ping very embarrassed were all indirect curses. All of the spearheads were pointed at him and Poplar Fruit, who had a conflict with Liang Huaxing, the second generation of the government official. That's right, the narrow-minded young Master Liang couldn't take it lying down. That night, he went behind his father's back and found the bureau chief of the Education Bureau to help him vent his anger. The bureau chief of the Education Bureau obviously wasn't as far-sighted as Lu Guoyang. He wanted to hug Liang Xingtao's thigh wholeheartedly. With such an opportunity, he naturally wanted to perform well. However, Meng Ping wasn't a soft egg that could be bullied by others. After he was scolded dizzily, he held his report and walked out of the office. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. After he figured it out, his anger suddenly rose. Before he could return to his office, Meng Ping grabbed the report and rushed back to the bureau chief's office. One was the bureau chief who used his power to bully others, and the other was Meng Ping, who never knew what obeying a leader meant. One could imagine how intense the argument between Meng Ping and the bureau chief was. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that the sky and the earth were turned upside down. Although Meng Ping was a little stubborn, No one could resist the fact that he had read a lot of books. When Meng Ping scolded people, he quoted from the classics. He was even able to forcefully exaggerate a principle that everyone knew could not be obeyed. At that time, the bureau chief was so angry that his blood vessels were jumping. It wasn't known if he was afraid of losing face or if his blood pressure was really high. But the bureau chief slammed the door and left. He directly asked the driver to send him to the hospital. Meng Ping, who had caused a storm, didn't care at all and returned to his office. However, the bureau chief really couldn't do anything to him. That night, when he went to Deputy County Magistrate Liang to fire this unruly guy, Deputy County Magistrate Liang comforted him and told him not to fight with Meng Ping. He's a stubborn person. Why bother with him? Why bother with him? If it weren't for your precious son, would I need to be angry with him? After the bureau chief heard Deputy County Magistrate Liang's words, he almost went crazy again. However, he couldn't complain in front of Deputy County Magistrate Liang. Therefore, the next day, the bureau chief simply said that he was sick and didn't come to work. Meng Ping didn't know what happened behind the scenes, but after being provoked by the bureau chief, Meng Ping's fighting spirit was aroused. He thought in his heart, I can't harm those children because of my mistake. No, I have to get this done. Without anyone's support, Meng Ping decided to do it himself. He diligently searched for information and wrote more than 10 pages of new reports with pictures and text. He was prepared to find an opportunity to directly report to the city. If the city couldn't do it, he planned to submit the report to the province. Meng Ping was terrifyingly stubborn, but no one, including him, expected Meng Ping to find a big problem with his investigation. As mentioned earlier, the county still had policies to support the children in the mountainous areas to study, especially teachers. Although it was a private teacher establishment, it was still a legitimate establishment. 1,000 yuan a month. When Meng Ping was searching for information, he inadvertently found out that although the 2 teachers in the mountainous areas hadn't been established, a salary of 2,000 yuan a month was still given out. How is this possible? Meng Ping was shocked. He hurriedly looked at the other 3 poor areas. Each area had 2 to 3 Hmong villages. Similarly, the county also had private teachers' establishment. According to what he knew, there were 6 establishments in these 3 places. Only 1 teacher was on duty. No one was willing to go to the other 5 establishments. However, the Bureau's financial report was full. Someone was taking advantage of the situation. Who was it? Chapter 584. Uncle Meng, do you know who it is? After hearing Meng Ping's angry story, Poplar Fruit could not sit still. He suppressed the anger in his heart and asked calmly. The one who understood him the most was Kiki, who was with him day and night. She was originally jumping around the tea table, poking this and that, but after glancing at her father, she ran to Zheng Yujia, climbed on the sofa, and hid behind her. She also whispered to Zheng Yujia, Papa is going to be angry. Papa is going to spank Kiki's little butt. However, Yang Guo's spearhead wasn't pointed at our dear Chi-Chi. It was just that when he heard Meng Ping say that he didn't know who was taking the salary of the teachers, he frowned and asked in a slightly louder voice, scaring the little guy once again. How could you not know? Uncle Meng, haven't you seen the financial report? I only saw the list of expenses. Meng Ping explained. It turned out that in order to understand the financial support for education in the mountain area in detail, Meng Ping had asked for the list of expenses of the Ministry of Education's financial department over the years. The list only showed how much money was spent on which projects, such as the donation of books. Of course, the list didn't list the names of the applicants or beneficiaries, and Meng Ping only saw the salary expenditure that was out of the ordinary. When he saw this, Meng Ping was about to get off work, and he, who was in a mess, did not have time to go to the financial department to find out who was taking the position and taking the salary. Because of this, the more Meng Ping thought about it after he came back, the more upset he felt. Until now, he was so depressed that he could not eat. If Poplar Fruit had not come, he would probably still be thinking about it. I will go to find out when I go to work tomorrow. Meng Ping gritted his teeth and said, If I find out that bastard is cheating the country's money, I will definitely not forgive him. Uncle Meng, you can't investigate. The one who spoke was Zheng Yujie. She had been sitting there without moving before, but when she opened her mouth, her words were shocking. Why? Meng Ping angrily looked at Zheng Yujie, as if he was treating her as an accomplice. His gaze was terrifying, as if he wanted to eat her. However, with Zheng Yujie's mental fortitude, how could she be frightened by a small deputy bureau chief in a remote village? Instead, she smiled lightly and said, I can't directly investigate. At least, I can't ask the people in your finance department. Zheng Yujie explained, to be able to get paid without being found out, there must be someone in the finance department helping with the accounts. If you ask directly, it will be exposed that you know the other party is getting paid without being found out. What are you afraid of? It is to let them know, to let the vermin of their country be afraid. Meng Ping straightened his chest and said in a clear voice, but you won't be able to find the results you want. Zheng Yujie knew that Meng Ping had a one-track mind because of Poplar Fruit's warning. She didn't care about Meng Ping's heroism at all. Poplar Fruit also advised, Uncle Meng, Yujie is right. If you ask them directly, not only will you not be able to find out what we want to know, but it will also arouse their vigilance. Think about it. The people who are involved in this matter must have a high position in the bureau, or they must have some connections. If you investigate, everyone will know. If they don't tell you and secretly destroy the evidence, then we will never be able to find out who stole the money, right? We also have to prevent them from doing anything desperate. Zheng Yujie had grown up in such a treacherous environment. She had seen a lot of things like this. Sitting there, she was like a military counselor. She only lacked a feather fan to have the domineering aura of strategizing and deciding victory from 1,000 miles away. Uncle Meng, when you quarreled with him previously, you violated the taboo of offending your superiors. I don't know why your bureau chief doesn't dare to punish you, but no matter what your background is, you have affected the interests of those people. They will not let you off easily. Zheng Yujie said seriously. I know what you want to say. Zheng Yujie waved her hand and impatiently interrupted Meng Ping's prepared speech. You can be unafraid, you can be fearless, but you have to think for everyone. You are now shouldering the hopes of hundreds and thousands of children in the mountain area to go to school. Can you bear to destroy all of this because of your impulsiveness? Meng Ping's mouth moved, but he didn't make a sound. He was shocked by Zheng Yujie's words. Let's think of a way to bypass them and find this information, Poplar Fruit suggested. He had a plan. If necessary, he could sneak into the Education Bureau in the middle of the night with his skills like Batman to find the Black Ledger. Just as Poplar Fruit and the others were about to have a heated discussion, Fat Dragon, who didn't have any presence at all, called out weakly, Hey, are you talking about this? When everyone turned to look at him in confusion, Fat Dragon held out the phone he had been fiddling with. The screen was facing upwards for Poplar Fruit and the others to see. Fat Dragon's phone was assembled by himself. At this time, there weren't many phones with large screens. In the end, Fat Dragon made one himself. It had a full 6-inch screen. Although it was a little thick, the configuration inside was far better than any smartphone on the market. It was estimated that no flagship phone in 2 or 3 years would be able to compete with it. However, everyone's attention wasn't on Fat Dragon's phone without a logo. Instead, they saw a form on the screen. List of private teachers subsidized for volunteer teaching in the mountain areas of Lidong County. There was a row of names behind it. How did you get this? Poplar Fruit asked, dumbfounded. When I heard you talking about this, I went into your finance bureau's internal mailbox. I looked for it and found it, Fat Dragon explained concisely. However, the process was far from as simple as he said. What did he mean by going into the internal mailbox? Fat Dragon didn't just hack into the Finance Bureau's internal system, he also cracked their mailbox password. Moreover, this series of actions had taken him less than 5 minutes. And he did it with a fucking phone. Zheng Yujie was also shocked by Fat Dragon's speed. She gave Fat Dragon a thumbs up and said, I'm starting to believe that you are an expert. It should be this list. Fat Dragon is too awesome. Poplar Fruit excitedly patted Fat Dragon's hairy thigh. Let me see the list. Meng Ping's attention wasn't on the process, but on the result. He reached out for the phone, and clumsily swiped the screen to see the list of names. Du Zhongwang. Li Shigui. Meng Ping's eyes lit up and shouted, I know Li Shigui. He is Li Dongshuan's nephew. Li Dongshan was the bureau chief that Meng Ping mentioned earlier. He was so angry that he didn't come to work. Chapter 585. Rushing around the corner, Poplar Fruit let out a sigh of relief when he saw the scene in front of him. Fortunately, I didn't lose out. Zheng Yujie told Poplar Fruit before that she practiced taekwondo, and it wasn't a lie. A man fell down in front of her, and there was a conspicuous shoe print on his chest. It was caused by Zheng Yujie's front kick, and the other party didn't completely dodge it. Of course, Zheng Yujie's kung fu was just to scare people. Poplar Fruit knew that with her strength, she could barely handle one-on-one. If she was surrounded by 5 men like now, she wouldn't be able to handle it. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit arrived in time. Just like how Zheng Yujie protected Kiki just now, Poplar Fruit hurriedly came up, reached out and grabbed Zheng Yujie's waist, and easily pulled her behind him. The aisle was narrow, and Poplar Fruit stood there like a man holding back 10,000 men. It's you. The exclamation from the opposite side wasn't unfamiliar. Poplar Fruit didn't bother to comfort Zheng Yujie and Kiki. He turned around and said in a deep voice, It's you. Poplar Fruit had seen these people before. Weren't they the BMW hooligan and his lackeys? In this small county, the only person who had crossed paths or conflicts with Poplar Fruit was Liang Huaxing, the BMW hooligan. Not only did Poplar Fruit know Liang Huaxing, but the people beside him were exactly the same as the one he saw that day. Zheng Yujie poked Poplar Fruit's waist from behind and asked curiously, You know them? I know them. It's really a small world for enemies. Poplar Fruit's lips curled up slightly, and his smile was a little cold. If it was someone else, Poplar Fruit would probably ask Zheng Yujie what happened. But Liang Huaxing? Hee. What else could this lecherous hooligan do besides groping women? Seeing Poplar Fruit, Liang Huaxing felt both depressed and happy. What was depressing was that every time he saw Poplar Fruit, it was always the same opening. He would flirt with a beautiful woman, and in the end, one of his men would be defeated. What's more, the beauty he had his eyes on this time was also a troublemaker. Her long legs that could make people lose their minds were full of vigor and power. For a moment, it even scared the men on his side. What made Liang Huaxing even more depressed was that all the rare beauties in Lidong were related to his sworn enemy, Poplar Fruit. Why didn't his father, the county mayor, have such beautiful encounters? His joy was because he couldn't find the Poplar Fruit no matter how hard he tried. In the end, the Poplar Fruit delivered itself to his doorstep. When he heard from Bureau Chief Liu that Poplar Fruit didn't have any background, he regretted not keeping the Poplar Fruit. These days, as long as he thought about the grievances and humiliation that Poplar Fruit had brought to him, he couldn't eat. Just because Liang Shengtao was in Lidong County with one hand, his son couldn't find anyone he wanted. Poplar Fruit wasn't a local, and if there was no news of the Poplar Fruit's car in the county, Liang Huaxing would be at a loss. He thought that Poplar Fruit had slipped back to Guangdong province, and there was no hope for revenge. There's a way to heaven, but you don't want to take it. There's no door to hell, but you just have to come. Liang Huaxing said in a genteel manner, and said proudly, Do you know how many days I've been looking for you? Poplar Fruit had a very bad impression of this BMW hooligan. He said coldly, You can't change your bad habits. Haven't you been beaten enough? I'll beat you up, motherfucker. Liang Huaxing felt very embarrassed. He threw the baseball cap on his head. You're about to die, yet you're still so stubborn. Today, I'll let you know how to write the word death. Not only did he throw the cap, but he also kicked it fiercely. The baseball cap flew toward Poplar Fruit like a shuttle. However, it was a little inaccurate. Poplar Fruit didn't even have to dodge. The baseball cap hit the glass window next to him. At this time, a person suddenly appeared behind Poplar Fruit and Zheng Yujie. It was one of Liang Huaxing's lackeys. If Poplar Fruit looked back, he would definitely recognize the guy with the baseball bat that day. He was the smartest person under Liang Huaxing. The moment he saw Poplar Fruit, he thought of Poplar Fruit's vigorous skills that day. He knew how powerful Poplar Fruit was. He was worried that they couldn't beat Poplar Fruit in such a narrow space, So he sneaked away and ran in a big circle behind Poplar Fruit. His idea was very clever. It wasn't just a pincer attack. Zheng Yujie and Kiki were behind Poplar Fruit. He didn't believe that Poplar Fruit could beat 5 people by himself with so many scruples. Poplar Fruit actually didn't let down his guard. He knew that if it was just a competition of whose fist was bigger, 5 more people wouldn't be enough for him. However, Liang Huaxing was a genuine local tyrant. Poplar Fruit felt that it was a little unbelievable that he was released from the Public Security Bureau. He didn't think that he had any advantage. He could only say that he was lucky. If there was a second time, like today, Poplar Fruit didn't think that they would have a chance to escape if Liang Huaxing called the police. After all, Liang Huaxing was Liang Shengtao's son. From the information that Fat Dragon found yesterday, Liang Shengtao was definitely the biggest boss in Litong County. Of the 36 stratagems, escape was the best. Poplar Fruit made up his mind to find a chance to escape the moment they met. Although it was very frustrating, it was never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. Fighting with the other party was the stupidest choice. Poplar Fruit, who had been paying attention to the escape route, noticed the guy behind them when he appeared. Before the people in front of him could react, Poplar Fruit was the first to react. Be careful. Poplar Fruit grabbed Zheng Yujie with his left hand. He didn't care if his big hand was pressing on Zheng Yujie's perky butt. His big arm pulled Zheng Yujie's body. Amidst Kiki's screams, Poplar Fruit turned sideways. His left leg almost drew a perfect circle in the narrow space. Bang! With a muffled sound, Poplar Fruit's leg came down from the top. He didn't even have time to react. It directly hit the shoulder of the person behind him. Poplar Fruit even held back. Even so, the person didn't make a sound and fainted on the ground. His shoulder blade seemed to have collapsed. Poplar Fruit was a little nervous. He seemed to have gone too far this time. At this time, Poplar Fruit couldn't help but regret. After dealing with the people behind him, the people in front of him screamed and rushed up. Although their teammates had been cleanly dealt with by Yang Guo, their master's clamor made them charge forward, dauntlessly wave their brooms and stools, as if they had been injected with chicken blood. Beat them to death. Don't misunderstand. This wasn't Liang Huaxing's words. Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he heard the fearless Zheng Yujie shout. Looking at her excited face, people who didn't know her would think that she was playing arcade games. However, this wasn't a game. This was a real-life fight. Poplar Fruit made up his mind. In order to protect the woman and child behind him, he couldn't care less. Chapter 586. Don't look at how Liang Huaxing and his lackeys were waving their weapons and yelling. Yang Guo didn't even put them in her eyes. Especially in this narrow aisle, where only one person could enter at a time. It was too easy to do so. Poplar Fruit even had time to stretch his hand behind him. He pulled Zheng Yujie, who was holding her daughter, and said without turning his head, "Follow me." Before he finished speaking, a black shadow came in. It was the broom in the leader's hand. Poplar Fruit's left hand backhanded, and with a poof sound, the broom hit the wall next to him. Since the other party was being rude and unreasonable, Yang Guo naturally wouldn't be polite. He didn't retreat and instead moved forward. His right hand lightly punched out, and he quickly retracted it. That person only felt something flash in front of his eyes, and his nose seemed to have been inexplicably hit by something heavy. His head was dizzy, and tears and blood flowed out of his nose. His whole body swayed, and he fell to the side. The people behind him were so excited that their eyes were red. They did not notice that their brother in front of them was knocked down so quickly. When they saw a gap, they squeezed in with a strange cry. Before the person arrived, the sound came first. A red plastic stool smashed in front of Yang Guo. He could dodge it, but if Poplar Fruit dodged it, what would happen to the people behind him? Zheng Yujie obediently followed him closely, and Kiki was hiding behind her father because she was scared. In a flash, Poplar Fruit made a decision. He raised his right hand and blocked in front of his head. Under the thin shirt, his muscles were tight, and his arm instantly swelled up, stretching the shirt. Gotcha! With a crisp sound, the plastic stool broke from the middle, leaving only the plastic leg in the hands of the dumbfounded guy. Poplar Fruit's eyes were filled with doubt. He really didn't feel any pain. Poplar fruit had internal energy to protect his body, so his resistance to attacks was quite strong. In addition, the plastic stool was light, so it didn't hurt much. Therefore, this attack was like scratching an itch through one's boots. Other than leaving a gray mark on his clothes, there was no other effect. When he confronted Liang Huaxing at the Public Security Bureau last time, Poplar Fruit did not dare to resist. It was not because he was afraid, but because he was worried that Kiki would be implicated. The other party was a bastard. Who knew if he would bite everywhere like a mad dog? This time, Poplar Fruit wanted to end the battle as quickly as possible, then take Zheng Yujie and Kiki away from this troublesome place. It was absolutely irrational to tangle with a local tyrant in his territory. Therefore, his movements started to become bigger. Without waiting for the other party to attack again, Poplar Fruit snorted. His right hand, which had just been hit by the stool, stretched forward and opened his 5 fingers. Like an eagle catching a chick, he grabbed the head of the person in front of him. The opposite person's face was covered. He kept screaming and waving his hands in the air. But before he could touch Poplar Fruit's hand, a huge force came from Poplar Fruit's hand. He almost had no room to resist, and his whole body involuntarily fell back. However, Poplar Fruit did not let him off so easily. Poplar Fruit strode forward, and the person who had just hit Poplar Fruit with the stool was pushed back by Poplar Fruit's right hand. In order to not let him fall to the ground, Poplar Fruit simply stretched out his left hand and grabbed his arm to support him. Speaking of which, these guys who spent all day drinking had hollowed out their bodies. There was not much meat on their arms, and they were like bamboo poles. Under Poplar Fruit's huge force, they could not move at all. Liang Huaxing and another gangster who were following behind didn't see what happened because their line of sight was blocked. By the time they reacted, their brother was being carried over by Yang Guo like a sandbag. It was as if they had been hit by a high-speed bus. Liang Huaxing and his followers fell to the ground one after another like dominoes. Aya, don't push. Liang Huaxing made a mistake. Listening to his scream, people who did not understand him would think that he was squeezing on a bus. Big idiot, you fucking pressed on my leg. Ouch, it hurts, it hurts. Liang Huaxing fell to the ground and was pinned down by his own people. It was not easy for him to get some space to breathe. The shame in his heart soared, and he painfully cursed again. Don't go if you have the guts. Liang Huaxing used one hand to support the follower who fell on top of him, and used the other hand to point at Poplar Fruit who went around them, and shouted in exasperation. So what if I go? Are you going to stop me? Zheng Yujie's temper rose. When she was young in Beijing, she was also a domineering person. She was the one who bullied others. How could others shout in front of her? With Yang Guo backing her up. Even if she was facing so many men in a strange place, she was not afraid at all. Instead, she bit her lower lip and rushed up with a face full of excitement. With a paw sound, she gave Liang Huaxing a kick. Ouch! Zheng Yujie's kick just happened to land on Liang Huaxing's outstretched index finger. Suddenly, Liang Huaxing felt that his finger was about to be broken. The intense pain made him wail again. Li Dong's #1 young master's face was completely lost. When he came back to his senses, Poplar Fruit and the others had already disappeared. At this time, his followers slowly recovered from Poplar Fruit's attack. Ouch, ouch. The guy who usually only knew how to bully others was too weak to even stand up to a gust of wind. Who told you to buy a watch? Liang Huaxing pushed the one on top of him. Only then did that person quickly stop screaming and pull his master up. Until everyone stood up, the guy who was just a meat cushion for Liang Huaxing, and the others did not move. With 2 people on top of him, it was enough for him. He was now very weak, and did not react for a long time. Motherfucker, go after him. Go after him. Why are you still standing here foolishly? Liang Huaxing angrily jumped up and slapped the follower who just pulled him up. In the end, he touched his finger that was just dislocated by Zheng Yujie's kick, causing him to grimace in pain. After being slapped by Liang Huaxing, those lackeys seemed to have woken up from a dream and hurriedly rushed out one by one. Too handsome, too handsome. Zheng Yujie was pulled out by Poplar Fruit. At this time, Kiki was already in Poplar Fruit's embrace. Zheng Yujie excitedly patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder. Poplar Fruit was speechless as he looked at this violent woman. Perhaps this was her real personality? But when Poplar Fruit saw Kiki's expression, his heart felt awkward. Auntie is so powerful. Kiki waved her small fist. The frightened expression she had when she was inside had been swept away. Her eyes were shining with a fervent light. She defeated Grey Wolf. Hey, it was obviously your dad who defeated him. She only added a kick. Poplar Fruit was helpless, but he did not want to argue about this. Instead, he was worried about Kiki's current state. After being with Zheng Yujie for a long time, would Kiki become as bad as her? Stop talking, let's go quickly. Poplar Fruit pulled Zheng Yujie and quickened his pace. Chapter 587. Thump thump thump. Zheng Yujie felt that her heart was about to jump out of her chest. She was not afraid, but she was too excited. Poplar Fruit was running with her. The warm touch on her palm told Zheng Yujie that all of this was real. However, countless classic scenes from movies still popped up in her mind. The most exciting one was the third movie that was released last year, where Sam was running with Callie in the ruins of a city destroyed by aliens. If the surrounding shop owners knew that Zheng Yujie had silently imagined the shop that they relied on to make a living as a ruin with black smoke curling up, would they have a feeling of wanting to die? Poplar Fruit ran with Zheng Yujie to the place where the car was parked. He inadvertently looked back, and his eyes swept past Zheng Yujie's obsessed eyes and fell on the corner where they had just escaped. There was a commotion. A cardboard box on the ground was kicked away, and several figures emerged from it. It was Liang Huaxing's followers. Ouch! Only a crashing sound could be heard. The person in the lead couldn't stop his feet, and accidentally bumped into a shelf. The goods on the shelf fell to the ground. Curses, complaints, and urging sounds could be heard for a while. It was a group of motley crew after all. Poplar Fruit ridiculed them in his heart, but he dared not let his guard down. He pulled Zheng Yujie and ran all the way. In the blink of an eye, they were more than 100 meters away from those guys, and this was with Zheng Yujie slightly holding them back. What the fuck are you talking about? Liang Huaxing scolded and pushed his followers who were quarreling with the shop owners. He shouted, "Go after them. Are you stupid?" He also glared at the indomitable shop owners and scolded, "Just you wait. If they run away, I'll ask my dad to arrest all of you." At this time, Poplar Fruit and the others had rushed to their Land Rover. "Give me Kiki, give me Kiki." Zheng Yujie's mind was still relatively clear. She grabbed Poplar Fruit, who was about to run to the driver's seat with Kiki in his arms. "What's wrong? What happened?" Fat Dragon was sleeping in the front passenger seat. When he saw Poplar Fruit hurriedly open the door and get in the car, he asked curiously. Poplar Fruit ignored him. Instead, he put on his seatbelt and fumbled for his car keys. Zheng Yujie also got into the car with Kiki in her arms. She slammed the door shut, then came up from the back seat, patted Fat Dragon on the shoulder and said, "Don't ask. Hurry up and put on your seatbelt. We're leaving." "You put on your seatbelt too." Poplar Fruit took the time to turn his head and look at Zheng Yujie. He said loudly, "Let's go, let's go." In Fat Dragon's puzzled eyes, Poplar Fruit started the Land Rover and slowly drove out of the parking space. At this time, the four people just jumped out of the shopping mall in embarrassment. They looked around. Liang Huaxing had the worst temper. He kicked a small stone and shouted, "Where are they? Where did the people from Masquerade go?" "Boss, boss." The smartest follower's eyes lit up. He pointed at Poplar Fruit's car and shouted, "Look at that car. That Land Rover." Liang Huaxing looked over subconsciously. He was confused for a while. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and he shouted, "Damn you. Car their car. Motherfucker, go after them, no block them." Seeing that Poplar Fruit's car was about to reach the road, Liang Huaxing angrily pushed his followers. But his followers looked at each other and didn't dare to go up. Using his mortal body, flesh and blood, to block such a huge Land Rover? Boss, are you fucking kidding me? Although it was possible that Poplar Fruit didn't dare to hit someone to death, it couldn't be ruled out. The Land Rover's steel behemoth-like body gave people a lot of pressure just by looking at it. "Boss, let's quickly chase after them." That follower was still smart. He stretched out his hand and said, "Chase, quickly chase after them. Liang Huaxing was blinded by hatred at this time. He didn't care about his BMW. He threw the key and shouted fiercely. Back in Poplar Fruit's car, they drove out before being blocked. Poplar Fruit could finally breathe a sigh of relief. At this time, Fat Dragon finally seized the opportunity to ask, "Fruit, what's going on? Why do we have to run? Do you remember that young Master Liang? We talked about it last night." Poplar Fruit concentrated on driving, and then said without turning his head, "I remember, it's that young master. His father has the power to control everything here." Fat Dragon said disdainfully. "Huh?" Fat Dragon asked in confusion. "Did you have a conflict with him again? Is this world so small that you can bump into him when you're shopping? He almost touched Wuxia." Poplar Fruit said concisely, "So we had a fight. Papa is the best." Kiki shouted in admiration from behind. "Kiki, don't imitate him," Poplar Fruit unhappily reprimanded in a deep voice. "It's not good to fight, especially for girls. You have to." Before Poplar Fruit finished his words, Zheng Yujia, who had been looking back, exclaimed, "They're catching up, they're catching up." "What?" Poplar Fruit, who thought he got rid of them, was shocked. He looked in the rearview mirror and saw a very flashy white BMW suddenly appear in the sparse traffic behind them. "Stop right there. If I catch you, you're fucking dead." The sunroof of the BMW was opened and Liang Huaxing's ugly and annoying face peeked out. Unfortunately, because it wasn't high enough, Liang Huaxing had to use one hand to hold on to the edge of the sunroof while the other hand reached out and waved. "What a haunting ghost." Poplar Fruit's face was gloomy. He said seriously, "Yujia, sit tight with Kiki." As soon as he finished speaking, Poplar Fruit stepped on the gas pedal. The Land Rover, which had a lot of horsepower, suddenly sped up and the car roared out. Lidong was a small county town, unlike Yangcheng, where even 3 or 4 lanes were congested. There weren't many people who could afford to buy a car here. Even though there were only 2 lanes, there were only a few cars in front of them. It was almost unobstructed. "Oh." Zheng Yujia leaned against the seat due to inertia. Not only was she not afraid, she held on to Kiki with one hand and grabbed the door handle with the other. She was so excited that she screamed. Was this a change of tape? Was it the same Fast and Furious 5 that was released last year? This rush of pleasure made one's scalp tingle. Fat Dragon, who was sitting in the front, showed the correct reaction of an otaku. He screamed in fear. He liked to race in games, but in real life he broke out in a cold sweat for his life. Kiki's reaction was very much in line with Poplar Fruit's prediction. The little girl liked to experience extreme speed the most. She didn't know what to be afraid of. Looking at the scenery outside the window, she screamed and laughed. Chapter 588. "Old man, did you see a car drive by?" Liang Huaxing rubbed his nose and stepped on the armrest of Xiong Duxiu's recliner as he lowered his head and asked casually. "It's a very big car. It's a Land Rover. When it drives, the sound is like thunder." The clever rascal quickly added, "Damn it." Liang Huaxing slapped him on the neck, causing him to stumble forward as he shouted in dissatisfaction. "Why are you interrupting? Do you think I don't know?" Liang Huaxing was still proudly teaching his follower a lesson. His foot was still on Xiong Duxiu's recliner. Bang! The sound of a palm hitting the table suddenly came from inside the store. Where did this Han come from? How dare you be so presumptuous here? The voice was very deep, causing Liang Huaxing's eardrums to buzz. What followed was the rustling sound of chairs being dragged, and the clanging sound of ironware colliding. Liang Huaxing was confused. He turned his head to look at the entrance of the store, and saw the curtain at the door being pulled open. 3 men with biceps as thick as Liang Huaxing's thigh walked out in a single file, carrying large sabers. This group of hedonistic hooligans who were used to riding roughshod over others had never seen such a scene other than in movies. The muscles on the 3 Miao people who were wearing headscarves were obviously not to be trifled with. The large sabers they were carrying were polished until they were shiny. For a moment, their shocked expressions were reflected on the surface of the sabers. Captain Wu, who was standing at the back, saw this and kept complaining in his heart. "I say, young Master Liang, why are you so blind? You even dare to provoke them?" The store was located in the middle of nowhere on the mountain road. There was not even a single car passing by. Do you think this kind of boss is a normal person doing business? That's right, the store did exist in the form of a scam. The customers were the tourists passing by. Although they would not forcefully kidnap you, if you wanted to rest and buy something to eat, you would have to face 100 yuan worth of mineral water and 500 yuan worth of instant noodles. Don't say that you don't want to buy after asking the price. Since you asked, you should pay up obediently. Otherwise, the swords of the Miao people who stayed in the store all day were not a joke. Poplar Fruit should be happy. He had always been treated with hospitality. He had never seen the real side of this scam. Don't do it, don't do it. Captain Wu had no choice. He could only bite the bullet and rush up, blocking in front of Liang Huaxing, and said with a smile, "It's all a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding." Misunderstanding? You put your foot on my head and you call that a misunderstanding? Xiong Duxiu, who was lying on the recliner, suddenly said this. At this time, the Miao man with a knife, he pointed his knife at Liang Huaxing and shouted, "You fucking want to die? That foot, show me your foot." His voice carried a strong smell of gunpowder, as if he wanted to remove one of Liang Huaxing's thighs. Although both sides were speaking Miao with different accents, most of the pronunciation was still interchangeable. The knife was like a cold star. It shook Liang Huaxing to the core. He grabbed Captain Wu, who was blocking in front of him, as if he was using Captain Wu as a shield, but he was still scared and kept retreating. "Captain Wu, gun gun." Liang Huaxing's trembling voice sprayed all over Captain Wu's face. Captain Wu was cursing in his heart. "You fucker, even if you want to die, don't drag me down with you." However, Captain Wu did not have any thoughts about the gun Liang Huaxing mentioned. Even if he was the captain of the Public Security Bureau's traffic brigade, he could not casually carry a strictly controlled gun with him. Coming out to support young Master Liang was a private matter. If he used a gun because of private matters, no one would be able to save him. Not to mention that he did not bring a gun when he left today. Even if Captain Wu brought a gun, he would not dare to use it. The Miao people were very vengeful. If he killed or injured any of them, he would not be able to leave this mountain today. "No gun, no gun." Captain Wu waved his hand and said with a bitter smile, "Young Master Liang, I think we should." Hearing about guns, the Miao people with knives paused. It was not that they were afraid of these guys in tiger skin. It was just that no one wanted to be wrongly killed by a gun without eyes. But no gun? Hee. The Miao people were no longer afraid at this moment. They approached step by step, while Liang Huaxing and the rest were scared and retreated step by step. The Miao people, including Xiong Jijio who rushed over, were only 4 people, while Liang Huaxing and the rest were almost 3 times their number. Even so, Liang Huaxing and the rest did not dare to move. Of course, there were only a few people in front. The police who followed behind did not have the prestige of a police officer at all. They all stayed far away and almost hid back in the car. Wait. Finally, Liang Huaxing, who felt superior in his heart, suddenly summoned the courage to call out, Do you know who my father is?" Liang Huaxing did not notice that they were all looking at him like he was an idiot. He said proudly, "Let me tell you, my father is Liang Shengtao, the county magistrate who is in charge of you. Do you know that? If you don't put down your knives, I'll call someone to arrest all of you in minutes." Captain Wu wanted to cry, but had no tears. He wailed in his heart, "My young master, you're still showing off here? Do you think others will be afraid of you? If they can arrest us, do you think we're just standing here for decoration? Get out." Although Xiong Jijio was the youngest of the 4 strong men, he stood in front with his knife, looked at Liang Huaxing coldly, and spat out a word. Liang Huaxing felt so wrong today that he wanted to die. He was beaten for flirting with a beauty. He could not beat Poplar Fruit in a fight. He could not even touch the exhaust of a car when he was chasing someone. And then he was chased out of this small shop that looked easy to bully with a knife. What was going on today? Why was he always so unlucky? Hey, can you be reasonable? Liang Huaxing's face turned red as he stammered. "I only asked one question. Do you have to be so aggressive?" Oh my God. It was always him who bullied others, but today Liang Huaxing actually complained about being wronged. The followers next to him all looked at Liang Huaxing. who was like a wronged little wife, with a stunned face. They saw him sniffle, and his eyes were a little red as he cried. Who are you? What enmity do I have with you? It's fine if you don't want to say it, but you still want to bully people? Let's go, let's go. Liang Huaxing pretended to be disdainful and shouted. Only ghosts want to waste time in this damn place. Captain Wu, do you know the way? Let's go to that damn Xiong village. Damn it, I think that kid must have run there. Chapter 589. As soon as Liang Huaxing finished speaking, a voice came from behind him. Really? Is Xiong village a place you can go as you please? He turned around and saw that 3 men in Miao Miao clothes had appeared behind him. They were also expressionless and had the same muscular build. The only difference was that these men who came down from the mountain path did not carry a machete. Instead, they carried 2 long sabers on their backs. The people who came were Xiong Jisher and his 2 brothers from the stronghold. Xiong Kahu said that he didn't care, but he was still worried about Yang Gua and the others. After notifying Xiong Jizhou and the others, he sent Xiong Jisher over. Xiong Jisher and his men rushed down the mountain and met Liang Huaxing and his men who were about to turn around and go up the mountain. He did not see poplar fruit, but from their words, Xiong Jisher understood that they were the enemies who wanted to cause trouble for poplar fruit. Was he being sandwiched? Liang Huaxing felt that his heart was about to jump out of his throat. Although there were only 3 newcomers, they gave Liang Huaxing and his men more pressure than the 4 strong men behind them. It's you. It's you. That guy with the surname Xiong. Liang Huaxing's eyes were a little dizzy, but he still recognized Xiong Jisher. However, he felt that Xiong Jisher was majestic today. After taking the machetes from his back, he looked down at them condescendingly, like an ancient general. So it's you. When Liang Huaxing turned his head, Xiong Jisher also recognized the guy who had been clamoring. His 2 blades clashed against each other, and the sound of steel clashing resounded through the mountain forest, scaring Liang Huaxing into retreating again and again. However, there were also 4 strong men from the Miao tribe behind them. Liang Huaxing found that he could neither advance nor retreat. He was so embarrassed that his face turned red. You. Liang Huaxing pointed at the 2 groups of people with trembling fingers. A man from the Miao tribe behind Xiong Jiliu smiled evilly and said, I forgot to mention that our surname is also Xiong. Are you looking down on us Miao people? Are you looking down on Xiong people? All of you, collude with each other. That brat must be up there. How could Liang Huaxing not understand at this time? It was clear that they were not allowed to come into contact with the poplar fruit. However, even if he knew that poplar fruit and the rest were in Xiong village, what could he do? Now that Liang Huaxing was stuck in this mountain, even if he was a dragon, he would still have to coil up. Just you wait. In the end, Liang Huaxing, who could not bear to leave this person behind, finally gave in under Captain Wu's persuasion. He got into the car and poked his head out to point at the Miao men who were calmly standing in the distance with swords in their hands. He yelled, Just you wait. I don't believe that you won't leave the mountain for your entire life. Drive. What the hell are you doing? Are you stupid? In the midst of the clamor and cursing, several cars drove away from the people's sight. Xiong Jisher and the others didn't take Liang Huaxing's words to heart. They looked at each other and smiled. They were all relatives, so they put down their swords and started chatting. This time, Liang Huaxing had lost all his face. After he went back, he would definitely take more crazy revenge. It was not that Xiong Jisher and the others didn't understand, but they were not worried at all. As Liang Huaxing said, I don't believe that you won't leave the mountain for your entire life. For these Miao people, they didn't have many opportunities to go down the mountain. As long as they stayed on the mountain, Liang Huaxing couldn't do anything to them even if his father was the mayor. Such a threat was really not painful at all. Of course, for poplar fruit and the rest, it was another matter. Xiong Jisher called poplar fruit and the rest back from their hiding place and warned them seriously. You guys be careful. Don't go to the county in the near future. I think so too. Do you think that those young masters will set up roadblocks in front of us? Fat Dragon said in fear. Look at your courage. Zhang Yujie laughed. She patted Fat Dragon's shoulder and said, Fatty, What are you afraid of? We'll deal with whatever comes our way. Are you worried that we can't deal with these little guys? She was a little depressed from being hunted down today. She made up her mind to ask her family after going up the mountain. As long as her father was willing to help, it would be as easy as killing an ant to deal with a county magistrate in a poor place. Poplar Fruit didn't want to ask for help. He thought that Zheng Yujie had the same idea as him. He smiled and said, "That's right, Fat Dragon. Hurry up and find more evidence. Let's wrestle with these big worms. I don't believe that no one can deal with them. Brother Yang, let's go up the mountain. Master can't wait to see you." Xiong Jisher came over to help Yang Gua share some of the burden, and honestly said. His current simple and honest expression was completely different from his previous majestic appearance. When they went up the mountain, Kiki was the happiest and proudest one. Zheng Yujie was a girl, and Fat Dragon was a big fat man. In order to take care of them, Poplar Fruit not only carried everything with Xiong Jisher, but also didn't let Zheng Yujie hold Kiki. Poplar Fruit had something in his hands, so he couldn't free his hands to hold his daughter. He could only let Kiki sit on his neck. This time Kiki grew taller. Daddy was 187 meters tall, and with the addition of his shoes, Chi-Chi was almost 19 meters tall with him in her arms. Sitting up high, she could see far away. The little fellow found that her field of vision had suddenly widened. The distant mountain peaks, the clouds, and the nearby vines and birds seemed to be within reach. Haha! The bell-like laughter resounded through the mountain forest, like a spring breeze brushing through people's hearts. The anger accumulated during the confrontation with Liang Huaxing seemed to have disappeared. "Papa, I want this, I want this." Suddenly, Kiki patted her father's head and cried. However, this time she didn't point to the interesting top, but to the simple and unadorned earth. "Sit tight, or your ass will break into 2 pieces when you fall," Poplar Fruit threatened. He looked in the direction of Kiki's finger, and saw several blue-purple flowers in the bushes by the roadside. The color of the flowers was a little rich, but because of the blue-purple color, even if it was rich, it was noble enough to make people fall in love with it. The flowers were pentagonal, with fine fluff on them. The cream-white stamen in the middle was more like a 5-pointed star. Its cream-white color was in sharp contrast with the thick purple petals. "This is Platycodon." Xiong Jisher walked up, squatted down, picked one flower and gave it to Kiki, and then explained with a smile. Because it was Miao language, Poplar Fruit asked a few more questions before he understood the word Platycodon. Platycodon. Zheng Yujie listened to Poplar Fruit's translation and cried with her eyes shining. Not that one. Poplar Fruit understood that Zheng Yujie thought of the Platycodon in Inuyasha at a glance. However, it seemed that they had the same effect in different ways. The gentle, beautiful, and often melancholy, which was also wearing a plain white blouse with a dazzling red kimono skirt. Her gentleness and kindness, her intelligence and calmness, her strength and melancholy were the most heart-wrenching scenery in that anime. Chapter 590. Huff 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 huff. Fat Dragon's panting was as heavy as an old bellows. His breath with bad breath constantly sprayed onto Poplar Fruit's face. Poplar Fruit really wanted to slap him down the mountain. Climbing a mountain was no different from a mountain of knives, and a sea of fire for a fat man. Fat Dragon could not even walk for 10 minutes. Later on, he had to stop and rest, which made Poplar Fruit and the rest unable to walk the distance that would normally take them 5 minutes after 20 minutes. Looking at the situation, they would not be able to reach Xiong village even if they walked until nightfall. Poplar Fruit could only pass Kiki to Zheng Yujie while he carried Fat Dragon on his back. He carried him. That's right, Poplar Fruit actually ignored everyone's objections and carried Fat Dragon, who was definitely over 100 kilograms. When Poplar Fruit straightened up, his shoes were almost sunk into the mud. Fat Dragon's waist was almost twice as thick as Poplar Fruit's. Everyone was scared out of their wits. They were all sweating for Poplar Fruit, worried that Fat Dragon would crush the skinny Poplar Fruit. Over 100 kilograms, was it very heavy? For Poplar Fruit, it was not considered easy, but it was not unbearable either. When Fat Dragon first climbed up, he was still a little unaccustomed to standing, but after he got used to it, He felt that he still had some strength left. Let's go. Poplar Fruit turned his head and greeted the people who were staring at him in a daze with a smile. Is it really that incredible? Look at your jaws, they're about to fall off. Zheng Yujie came up with an intoxicated look on her face. She reached out and pinched Poplar Fruit's strong triceps. She said exaggeratedly, "TSK, Poplar Fruit, I didn't expect you to be so muscular despite being so skinny." Although he knew that Zheng Yujie's expression was fake, Poplar Fruit still felt very uncomfortable when she touched him in front of so many people. He quickly carried Fat Dragon and strode forward as if the 100-kilogram fat man was nothing more than a school bag on his back. It was not easy to get back to Xiong village. Fat Dragon had been lying on Poplar Fruit's back the whole time. Although it was a little bumpy, he had enough rest, and became the most energetic after getting down. Of course, other than the pervert Poplar Fruit. It's just like a movie. All that's missing is the bandits. Fat Dragon walked around the wooden gate twice and said excitedly, "If it were me, I would definitely arrange a team of archers here. It's high and low, easy to defend and hard to attack." "Do you think you're playing Age of Empires?" Poplar Fruit laughed. "If I knew that you had enough rest, I would have let you climb up on your own after crossing the suspension bridge." "Don't Fruit, it's not like you don't know that I'm weak." Fat Dragon hurried over and said flatteringly. Even Zheng Yujie had a vomiting reaction when she heard such words from that figure. Poplar Fruit was a frequent visitor. Along the way, many Miao women greeted him. Today, the children were quite well behaved. They did not swarm over like last time. They just followed Poplar Fruit from a distance. They pointed at Fat Dragon and were a little scared and curious. It seemed that they had never seen such a fat person before. "Where did you put the computer?" Fat Dragon rubbed his itchy fingers and asked excitedly. His biggest interest in life was computers. He felt that as long as he had a computer connected to the internet, he would have no regrets in his life. This time, Poplar Fruit was able to summon him all the way here. Other than his good relationship with Poplar Fruit, the most important reason was probably the new computer from the Comet system. "Put it at the school. Let's put it there first before we go over." Poplar Fruit pointed at a small house in the north of Miao Village and said, "Put what? Take it directly." Fat Dragon couldn't hold back anymore. He threw down these words and rushed to the school like a wisp of smoke. Poplar Fruit and the others looked at each other helplessly and smiled bitterly. They really didn't know why this big fat man was so clumsy usually, but when it came to computers, he became like a strong athlete. Poplar Fruit had no choice but to take out Fat Dragon's luggage and put it at the door of Xiongji's house. Then he brought his daughter and Zheng Yujie over. "Sir, I was wrong, sir. Murder. Help." Before they got close, they heard Fat Dragon scream. Then Poplar Fruit saw a fat figure running out of the school's door. When Fat Dragon saw Poplar Fruit, it was as if he saw his savior. He ran over with snot and tears. Poplar Fruit saw that one of his trousers had a long cut, but it was only his trousers. He wasn't hurt. "Master, you're right." Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he saw Xiongkahu walk out from behind Fat Dragon with a Miaodao in his hand. Poplar Fruit had already guessed the plot. Fat Dragon must have only cared about the computer. After he rushed into the school, he directly rushed to the computer on the table. The computer was Xiongkahu's lifeblood. He would rather stay here and guard it. Even if Poplar Fruit was in trouble, he would ignore it. How could he tolerate an inexplicable person's violation of it? That was the truth. Xiongkahu pulled out his Miaodao with a clang. It cut through the air like moonlight and directly slashed at Fat Dragon's crotch. Xiongkahu's trousers were cut. Xiongkahu had a sense of propriety and controlled his strength perfectly. However, Fat Dragon didn't think so. He felt a chill in his crotch. He almost lost his Fat Dragon. After that, Fat Dragon ran out in fright and cried to Poplar Fruit. "That's my master. Who told you to be so reckless?" Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he said to Fat Dragon. Then he explained to him in Xiongkahu. Xiongkahu snorted. He didn't put away the Miaodao in his hand. He intentionally pointed at Fat Dragon, making Fat Dragon's eyelids twitch. "One look and I can tell that he's a lazy person." Poplar fruit, don't try to trick me with this. Would an expert be like this? Hey, old man, you have to be responsible for what you say. Fat Dragon jumped out in dissatisfaction. When it came to his proudest computer skills, he even forgot about the experience of being scared out of his wits. He faced Xiongkahu's Miaodao head-on. What do you mean I'm not an expert? Then why don't you find one for me to see? Let's see who's better. Both of you stop arguing. Poplar fruit quickly mediated between the two. Master, you don't understand computers. There are many experts like him. They stay at home every day. Fat Dragon, you should stop talking. This is my master. He's your elder. Even so, he shouldn't be so annoying. Fat Dragon said unhappily. However, he only mumbled. He was afraid of Poplar Fruit's anger. As for Xiongkahu, he snorted coldly and put away his Miaodao. However, his face still showed disdain and disbelief. Chapter 591. Crackle, crackle, crackle. Xiongkahu stood to the side, blocking Poplar Fruit behind him. He looked at Fat Dragon with a pained expression. To be exact, he was looking at his thick fingers frantically typing on the keyboard. It was as if he was looking at a delicate flower being bitten by a dog. He had the urge to chop this bastard up with a knife. Fat Dragon did not sense the danger at all. His eyes were shining, and he was typing codes that no one could understand in the command prompt. He said without raising his head, "Fruit, where did you find this computer? There is actually such a talent in the country." His idea of opening up a new path is very innovative in the eyes of the whole world. How is it? Poplar Fruit asked curiously. Can this computer be used? Why can't it be used? After Fat Dragon finished typing the code, he habitually pressed the enter key with his middle finger. Then he stared at the computer that was crazily refreshing Windows and said, "Don't think of it as a normal computer. Just think of it as an enlarged version of a super phone. TSK, this configuration is still very high. Of course, it is not without shortcomings." Fat Dragon clicked his mouse twice and continued to ramble on. This guy is called Kybird Rookie? He even left his name in the system. This is not a good habit for a hacker. I digress. He has the ability, but compared to Fat Dragon, there is still a big gap. Anyway, I think this system has a lot of loopholes. The functions are too simple and crude. It needs to be improved. Fat Dragon's words were somewhat unconstrained. He said this and that, which made Poplar Fruit confused. Not to mention Kiki, who was bored from the beginning. Aya. Papa, Kiki wants to go out and play. Kiki forcefully pulled Poplar Fruit's hand, stomped her feet and shouted angrily, "Papa!" The sweet voice made Poplar Fruit temporarily shift his attention to her. Go, you have to be careful. Don't go to the mountains with your brothers and sisters to play. Don't dirty your clothes, do you understand? After Poplar Fruit became a father, nagging had become a habit. Zheng Yujia, who was next to him, covered her mouth and snickered. What are you laughing at? Poplar Fruit asked Kiki to go out and join his friends who were leaning against the window. Then he turned around and glared at Zheng Yujia. I'm laughing at you for being long-winded. You're just like an old mother. Zheng Yujia retorted without hesitation. I'm worried about you. As a father, I'm worried, so I said a few words. How can you call me long-winded? Poplar Fruit said with dissatisfaction. You're still young. When you have children, you'll know what it means to worry. A little brother Yang, how old are you? You say I'm young, as if you're already old. Zheng Yujia was lectured by Poplar Fruit like an old man. She immediately raised her eyebrows and shouted. The two were bickering like enemies. At this time, Fat Dragon had a preliminary understanding of the situation of the system. He pulled out a data cable and connected it to his mobile phone. Fat Dragon's mobile phone really can't be called a mobile phone. After Fat Dragon's DIY assembly, this overly thick mobile phone not only has strong performance, but also can be used as a portable hard drive. As much as 1 TB of storage space, it was stuffed with a lot of hacking tools that Fat Dragon programmed himself. This is also the reason why Fat Dragon didn't bring a computer with him this time. Xiongkahu looked at Fat Dragon with a puzzled face as he used a rope to tie a brick to the computer. He couldn't hold it in anymore. His big hand pressed on Fat Dragon's mobile phone. He looked at Fat Dragon with a vigilant face and asked, "Little fatty, what are you doing?" "AI. Sir, can you not interfere with my work?" Fat Dragon hugged his head and cried out, "What am I doing? Of course I'm programming. I don't blame you if you don't understand, but why do you keep interrupting me? Hee, although this old man doesn't understand, I'm not senile. You just hit my computer, and I'll tolerate it. Now you want to hit it with a brick? You don't want to leave here alive, do you?" Xiongkahu glared at him with his bell-like eyes and shouted with a murderous aura. There were only two kinds of people who could ignore Xiongkahu's murderous aura. One was a freak like Poplar Fruit, who was a level higher than him. The other was a nerd like Fat Dragon, who didn't know what it meant to seek death. He only felt that the surroundings were a little cold, but he didn't believe that Xiongkahu would do anything to him. He thought to himself, "Hee old man, don't think that I don't know that you only know how to scare people." Fruit. Fat Dragon was unreasonably interrupted by Xiongkahu, so he could only helplessly ask Poplar Fruit for help. "Why is your master always in my way?" Poplar Fruit walked over, but Xiongkahu jumped out and blamed Fat Dragon. "I'm in your way? Who told you to have evil intentions? Poplar Fruit, look at this brick. He must be planning to break our computer. Also, you hit it so hard just now. Although I don't understand, you didn't hit it so hard in the past." Poplar Fruit looked at the two of them, and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Master, you've really misunderstood. This isn't a brick. It's just a phone that looks more like a brick. And Fat Dragon, you also need to change your bad habits. Why did you hit the keyboard so hard? There's a mainframe under the keyboard. Our computers will be used by our children in the future. Take it easy and don't break it." Poplar Fruit didn't help either of them. At noon, Poplar Fruit brought Zheng Yujie to find Kiki for lunch. Fat Dragon, however, refused to move. He was completely focused on this new toy. Not only that, but he was also confused about the outside world. Poplar Fruit called him a few times, but this guy actually took out a wrinkled 50 yuan note from his pocket and handed it to Poplar Fruit. "Fruit, I don't want to eat anymore. Help me buy an M&A. I want a Big Mac. Yes, a set meal." "M&A your ass." Poplar Fruit was speechless. This guy thought that he was still in his hometown in Guangdong province. How could he buy a M&A in the middle of nowhere? Poplar Fruit had no choice but to finish eating and give it to him. Xiongkahu, who didn't want to give up, also brought food over. When they returned, Poplar Fruit found that Fat Dragon had left the computer and was sitting cross-legged without caring if the floor was clean or not. Beside him was a pile of strange equipment bought from the county. "What are you doing?" Zheng Yujie curiously pulled open a plastic bag to take a look. "Don't move." Fat Dragon shouted. "Don't lose the parts." His voice was filled with dissatisfaction and almost scared Zheng Yujie. "TSK, I won't move then." Zheng Yujie threw down the bag in disdain. She also saw that there were a bunch of wires and screws inside. This made her completely lose interest. Chapter 592. Fat Dragon was like a different person when he was fiddling with the electronic equipment. His thick fingers didn't seem clumsy, but they were so flexible that Poplar Fruit was surprised. After a while, he assembled a receiver pot that looked like a radar. Fat Dragon didn't just assemble the receiver pot for the TV model. He also took apart the bulging component box and replaced it with the parts he needed. "Using this to surf the internet? How do you do it?" Poplar Fruit asked curiously. "Do you look at the sky and capture a satellite signal? Then you forcefully decode it and change it to our dedicated network channel?" Poplar Fruit's imagination was also more imaginative, but Fat Dragon shook his head and looked at Poplar Fruit like he was an idiot. He said, "How is that possible? Do you think you are writing a novel? If satellites could be so easily decrypted and controlled by us, why would the United States need to develop a long-range weapon to attack satellites?" Fat Dragon asked, "Do you know how a mobile phone can surf the internet? Through what base station?" Poplar Fruit really didn't understand this knowledge, but he did read a foreign report about the 4G network. There seemed to be such a term in it. "Base station? You know?" Fat Dragon was speechless. "Then why did you mention satellites?" Fat Dragon didn't know that poplar fruit was purely rote in this scientific knowledge. He didn't really understand it, but he still explained to Poplar Fruit the role of a base station in wireless network signal transmission. You can think of a base station as a radio transceiver station for information transmission. Forget it, you don't need to know how it works. Anyway, you just need to know that without a base station, your mobile phone can't surf the internet. Poplar Fruit took out his mobile phone and asked doubtfully, "Now my mobile phone can't surf the internet, but why can the wireless network card still connect?" "It seems like it can connect, but the internet speed is very slow." "Nonsense, your mobile phone is a Unicom 3G card. The base station's coverage is higher in the big cities, but it won't work in the countryside. Now that you are in the middle of nowhere in the mountains, you can barely make a phone call. It would be weird if you could still connect to the internet." Fat Dragon complained. He didn't see Xiongkahu looking at him with murderous eyes. "The wireless network card is a mobile or telecom card, right? Mobile has the widest coverage area. It has more signal towers. The telecom base station is more interesting. It has an advantage in the countryside, as the coverage area is larger than a Unicom." Fat Dragon laughed. "Of course, deep in the mountains, no matter which one, there is no one would use it. Who would build a base station? What you received is probably the signal from the base station near the road. The base station's signal didn't disappear for no reason. After its energy is transmitted over a certain distance, it can't reach the reception range of our mobile phones because of the loss. That's why we need many base stations to cover it. There are no base stations in the mountains, so the signal is very weak here. Naturally, the internet speed is very slow. Then how do you do this?" Poplar Fruit asked as he pointed at Fat Dragon's receiver pot. "The principle is very simple. It's like a radar. This receiver pot will gather the weak refracted signals in the air, and then through our receiver, the signal will be strengthened." Fat Dragon explained, "But because it used to receive satellite signals, I just modified the receiver so that it can handle network signals." "So that's how it works." Poplar Fruit suddenly understood. He watched as Fat Dragon connected the receiver pot to a common Wi-Fi router on the market. After a while, it formed a wireless connection from wired to wireless. Poplar Fruit didn't ask any more questions. He didn't understand it anyway, so there was no need to get to the bottom of it. Fat Dragon must have his own reasons for making it so complicated. Looking at the receiver pot, Poplar Fruit frowned and asked, "Is this considered illegal?" "Satellite TV receiver pots are illegal." "How is it illegal?" Fat Dragon laughed. "At most, it's a super network card." He asked for the MacBook that Poplar Fruit brought before coming over. Fat Dragon suddenly smiled mysteriously. "Fruit, compared to the ones below, this is really not illegal." Fat Dragon copied a few software from his phone to Poplar Fruit's computer. Then somehow he connected to the wireless network. The software began to crazily refresh the green data. Rows of codes and numerical symbols that Poplar Fruit couldn't understand flowed across the screen like a waterfall. Poplar Fruit was no stranger to this scene. Wasn't it like the data flow that hackers attacked in the movies? After a while, Fat Dragon seemed to have logged into some management page. He then pressed a few buttons on the computer. Poplar Fruit remembered what Fat Dragon said just now. He asked in confusion, "What are you doing?" "This is the management backend of the Guishan Telecom database." Fat Dragon replied absent-mindedly while nervously tapping on the keyboard. "Don't be noisy, I only have 1 minute." However, Fat Dragon was very fast. He finished his actions in less than 30 seconds. He immediately exited the page and let out a sigh of relief. He turned to Poplar Fruit and said, "I didn't expect the management backend of the telecom to be upgraded after not seeing it for half a year. I just got the highest authority, but because the password is updated every minute and there is no key, I will be discovered if I stay in there for more than a minute." Fat Dragon smiled casually, as if the dangerous intrusion just now was as simple as opening a bottle cap and drinking water. "Now I've created a new virtual ChinaNet account in there. It allows me to surf the internet for free with unlimited time and unlimited data flow. There's free internet." Poplar Fruit asked in confusion. His wireless network card cost 200 yuan a month. Of course there is, Fat Dragon said with a smile. This account is for the whole year. I just modified the backstage data and added the payment record in the general database. No one can find any loopholes. There seem to be no package for the whole year, but let's just say that there is one. This is the free internet you were talking about? Poplar Fruit was speechless. Is there a need for that? Can't we just buy an account online for a year? Doesn't that cost money? Fat Dragon nagged. Now it costs 300 yuan a month, and 3,000 yuan a year. Spending money is a small matter. We don't lack money. Poplar Fruit grabbed the computer. Give it to me. 3,000 yuan to set a good example for the children. It's money well spent. Xiao Han doesn't know much about technology. Don't worry about this chapter. There are some parts that don't match reality. Let's just laugh it off. Chapter 593. After connecting to the internet, Fat Dragon randomly found a movie to download from Poplar Fruit's computer. In the end, the skyrocketing internet speed was shocking. It was 10 megabytes per second. Poplar Fruit's eyes widened. He had only experienced such speed in school. The main thing is that there are not many people using it. Fat Dragon explained. There's no one nearby who uses a mobile phone to access the internet, so we can take up most of the bandwidth. Fat Dragon, can you try to use my computer to play a video for the one on the table? Or rather, we can have a video chat between the two of us. Poplar Fruit patted his shoulder and asked, what are you planning to do? Fat Dragon moved to the table and said, if it's just to play a video file remotely, it shouldn't be a problem. I just need to write a video player program. But if you want a video chat like QQ, I'll need to install a camera for this computer. It doesn't have a camera lens, right? Yes, I'll buy it. Zheng Yujie was behind him. She dug out an external camera from the few boxes she brought with her when she first arrived. Okay, I'll make one for you now. Fat Dragon sat in front of the computer and started coding again. This Kybird, the design system doesn't even provide a video player, so I have to do it. Sigh. Fat Dragon obviously didn't write a video player software on the spot. Although he was very good, he couldn't do something that a team of people couldn't do in a few months. Fat Dragon directly hacked the video player in his phone, then copied and pasted the code. Then he slightly modified some of the core parts to match the current terminal. After all, the Comet system was born out of the Android system. So Fat Dragon only spent a little more than an hour to complete the copying work. Poplar Fruit and the rest were watching with interest at first, but after a few minutes, even the old-fashioned Xiong Kahu couldn't be bothered to look. Poplar Fruit and Zheng Yujie also came to the outside of the school to chat. Poplar Fruit, I have an idea. Zheng Yujie leaned against the wooden railing and watched Kiki playing with her friends outside the school with Poplar Fruit. Hee, I don't understand what they're doing. Why are they laughing so happily? What do you think? Poplar Fruit was a little absent-minded at first. His thoughts were all on the little girl. When he came back to his senses, he turned his head and asked in confusion. I'm going to Guangdong province, not to play. Zheng Yujie bit her lower lip and said seriously. What? A trace of doubt flashed in Poplar Fruit's eyes. He doubted his ears. Come to Guangdong province? You mean long-term residence? What do you think? Zheng Yujie stared at Poplar Fruit's expression and asked. That's my only idea. I only got it 2 days ago. Why do you want to come to Guangdong province? Also, what about your job? Poplar Fruit's face was indescribable. It was neither happy nor unhappy, but his eyebrows were wrinkled. In fact, his last question was, you're not coming here because of me, are you? He had such a feeling, but he swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue and changed it to another one. Poplar Fruit wryly smiled in his heart. The uneasiness in his heart was getting more and more serious. Zheng Yujie bit her lip. Her crystal white teeth left a deep mark on her lips. I haven't thought about it yet. Maybe I'll resign and open my own publishing house. Poplar Fruit was startled. He said in surprise, open a publishing house? That's not a small difficulty. Moreover, why do you want to open a publishing house in Guangdong province? Do you know my father? Zheng Yujie asked. Poplar Fruit shook his head in confusion and said, I don't know. I've seen your mother once. Ah, you've seen my mother? Zhang Yujia's face suddenly turned red. She was a little shy, but in an instant, she became angry. Hey, why didn't you tell me that you've seen my mother? Being angry was just a pretense, but Zhang Yujia's heart was still pounding. She was worried that her mother would say something to Poplar Fruit that shouldn't be said. After such a long time, Poplar Fruit felt that there was nothing to hide. He honestly told Zhang Yujia about his meeting with Deng Baoyan at the hotel that day. Of course, Poplar Fruit still selectively ignored some extreme scenes, such as the 2 bodyguards that Deng Baoyan brought along, and the conversation between the 2 of them that made their faces red. However, no matter how he looked at it, Poplar Fruit's first meeting with Zhang Yujia's mother was not a pleasant experience. Zhang Yujia pushed Poplar Fruit with some annoyance and said, "You're really too straightforward. Why are you so serious with her? She made it clear that she wanted to make you angry." Back to Zhang Yujia's father, Zhang Yujia introduced her father's resume a little, and then told Poplar Fruit, "My father should take office next year, so if I start a business in Guangdong province it will be easier. There are fewer constraints in all aspects compared to Beijing." Hearing that Zhang Mingxing would become the leader of Guangdong province, Poplar Fruit was shocked. He knew that Zhang Yujia was the 2nd generation of an official, but he never thought that her family background would be so strong. However, he was only shocked for a moment, and then he calmed down. Wasn't it just the provincial party secretary of Guangdong province? He was a commoner, and an ordinary person who would take the academic route in the future. Not to mention the provincial party secretary, he probably wouldn't have any intersection with the head of the education department above him. However, as a friend, Poplar Fruit was still happy for Zhang Yujia. He also excitedly analyzed to Zhang Yujia, "So it's like this. It's good that you want to come to Guangdong province to develop." Although Guangdong province's cultural heritage is not as good as Beijing, it has more vitality and opportunities. Many young people choose to start a business in Yangqing and Shenzhen. However, opening a publishing house, do you want to reconsider this? A publishing house isn't something that can be opened in a short period of time. Zhang Yujia smiled and said, "Don't worry, I'm not that arrogant. I just think that I know the operation of a publishing house best. If I choose to do a business, I still want to be in the publishing house industry. Oh, I don't want to start a business alone. You have to help me." "Of course," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "We have such a close relationship. If I don't help you, who will? It's just that I only know how to do translation. I'm not good at publishing books." The business of a publishing house is mainly the introduction of foreign books. Zhang Yujia said seriously. The good books in China are basically divided up by those traditional publishing houses. If it's a foreign book, we might be able to dig out good treasures if we cooperate. The good foreign books are also snatched up. Poplar Fruit said with a headache. For example, your current boss, Dongxin Publishing, and other foreign books, the commercial press, and so on. Do we have the confidence to get a piece of the cake from them? Chapter 594. Hey, you're killing me. Zhang Yujia pushed Poplar Fruit's chest with her shoulder and said, "I finally had the idea of being independent, and you gave me such a cruel reality." "You're the one who didn't think it through," Poplar Fruit said helplessly. "Aren't we talking about it? Of course, I have to give you a heads up when I think about the risks. I can't let you hit a wall like a fool, right?" "You're the fool." Zhang Yujia kicked him and looked up. Her beautiful phoenix eyes stared at Poplar Fruit and said, "I don't care. You have to think of a new idea for me." "Well," Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said, "Why don't you find a publishing house in Guangdong province and jump ship? With your experience, you should be able to find a good job." "No, I want to do it myself. I don't want to work for others." Zhang Yujia shook her head and said, Well, then you buy a publishing house." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "It doesn't have to be too good. Then you can be your own boss. There won't be much room for development." "How can that be?" Zhang Yujia said unhappily. "If I, Zhang Yujia, open a publishing house, I must do the best. How can I muddle through?" She suddenly realized the problem and angrily stretched out her hands to pull Yang Guo away. She didn't know when Yanghua had sneaked a peek at Chi-Chi's big face, but she stomped her foot and said angrily, "Hey Yanghua, don't patronize me, be serious." Poplar Fruit looked at Zheng Yujie. Although she still had the same playful expression, there was disappointment and grievance hidden in the depths of her eyes. He was shocked, and a thought flashed through his mind. Do I care too little about her? This thought. It was a very bad sign, but Poplar Fruit still found an excuse to deceive himself. Friends should care about each other. Zheng Yujie has done so many things for you. Now, when it's her turn to think about her own future, you don't care about her. How can you be a good friend? After being serious, Poplar Fruit suddenly had a flash of inspiration. He finally dared to look at Zheng Yujie's eyes. He rubbed his left thumb and middle finger and said with a smile, "I have a good idea." Really? Zheng Yujie looked at Poplar Fruit in surprise and asked. She was like my daughter, who was very gullible. Just now, she was angry because Poplar Fruit didn't care about her. Then, she was happy because Poplar Fruit snapped his fingers. However, this time, Poplar Fruit didn't disappoint her. He said with a smile, "Since we can't do well in the domestic book market, and can't compete with the big publishers for high-quality books imported from abroad, then we might as well go out and sell our domestic good books." You mean to translate our Chinese books into foreign languages? Zheng Yujie asked in surprise. Can this work? Isn't it more difficult? Zheng Yujie was right. Foreign language books were pouring into the country in waves, and there were even quite a number of them on the bestseller list. However, the sales of Chinese books overseas were like a quagmire, and it was difficult to move an inch. Asia was relatively optimistic. Southview, which was next to it, belonged to the Han cultural circle, and their thinking was relatively similar to the Chinese people. In addition, their cultural industry was relatively backward, so Chinese books even occupied half of the new book market in recent years. South Korea, Malaysia, and Singapore were also the main export countries. However, in Europe and the United States, because of the different cultural background, it was difficult for readers to feel the beauty of the Chinese narrative style. Very few Chinese books were popular in the West. For example, Teacher Mo Yan, who Poplar Fruit worked with before, his works were very popular in France. That was already a rare success story. Of course, Teacher Mo Yan's success was not only because his writing style was more in line with the thinking of Western readers, but also because his French translator was more reliable. Of course, the opening of the movie also made some excellent Chinese works sell well overseas. The most recent example was A.I. Mi's Hawthorne Tree Love. Although it was a work that came back to China from overseas Chinese circles, it was originally published in Chinese. Because director Zhang's movie became an instant hit, this book has been introduced to 15 countries. In fact, after the translation of this book was published in Ghana, it quickly squeezed into the list of bestsellers. Other than that, there was nothing else. However, Poplar Fruit wasn't as worried as Zheng Yujie. He smiled confidently and said, "It's because this path is so difficult that very few people take it that we have a better chance of success. Did you forget? The man in front of you can't only translate foreign books into Chinese." Zheng Yujie obviously knew what Poplar Fruit meant. Poplar Fruit's translation ability had been recognized. His translation of the Swedish version of Life and Death Fatigue, a few months ago, already proved his ability. However, Zheng Yujie still didn't feel optimistic. "I know, but didn't you say it yourself? Our way of thinking is different from foreign people. Even if the books are readable, what if they still don't like it?" Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "I'm talking about traditional literature. It's really difficult for our traditional literature to go out. It can't be helped." At that time, the literary circle was relatively closed. Even now, we find the books difficult to understand, let alone foreigners. But it's different after the 21st century. Poplar Fruit said, "Our generation watches American dramas, American blockbusters, and even Western games. We're not so conservative. Then look at the works written by our generation. Don't they have a lot of changes from the past?" "Are you talking about Handsome Han and Guo Xiaoxi?" Zheng Yujie's eyes lit up, but she sighed and said, "No, I remember that foreign publishers tried to sell their works, but they didn't become popular." "Haha, who said I was talking about them? Poplar Fruit laughed. I'm talking about online novels. Online novels? Zheng Yujie was confused by Poplar Fruit. Yes, we want to promote the best online novels in our country, especially fantasy and xianxia novels. Poplar Fruit's eyes lit up and said, there are Harry Potter and Twilight in foreign countries, but so do we. We have God Searchers, Mercenaries of the World, Ethereal Journey, Battle Through the Heavens, and so on. These novels are not literary works in the traditional sense, but it's a big blend of Western fantasy literature and our martial arts literature since the 21st century. There's magic, ancient martial arts, xianxia, and innovative fighting spirit. Poplar Fruit became more and more excited as he spoke. He clenched his fist and said confidently, if we can translate these excellent online novels to foreign countries, I believe there will be a very large audience. In fact, I believe that one day, Hollywood will be willing to invest a huge amount of money to make our fantasy works into a fantasy masterpiece like Lord of the Rings. Yang Guo waved his hand. His vision seemed to be flowing through the mountains and rivers of this world. Chapter 595. In front of Yang Guo, Zheng Yujie would do some unusual things because of the love in her heart. For example, she would kiss Yang Guo in front of everyone despite being quite conservative. She would use Yang Guo's support as an excuse. For example, she, who was usually strong enough to make all the men in the world kneel before her, would show a shy and girlish side. For example, just now, she was sad and angry because Yang Guo was perfunctory with her, but in the next moment, she was overjoyed because of Yang Guo's inspiration. But if you think of Zheng Yujie as a woman whose IQ will drop to 0 because of love, then you are gravely mistaken. She would lose herself because of Poplar Fruit, but in the face of important things, her calmness would never change. Perhaps this was the good family education inherited by Zheng Mingsheng, who was about to become the governor of Guangdong province. Hearing Poplar Fruit's domineering and vehement speech, it seemed that the magnificent prospects of his future translation of excellent online fantasy novels had appeared in front of her eyes. At this time, Zheng Yujie calmed down and seriously considered the feasibility of Poplar Fruit's plan. It had to be said that the novels that were popular around the world in the past 10 years, except for the mystery series, Dan Brown's Angels and Demons, and the Da Vinci Code, etc., seemed to be mostly Western magic or fantasy novels. Not to mention The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, which had been popular decades ago. Even if they had been published for decades, they were still selling well because of the movie adaptations. In terms of time, Rowling's Harry Potter at the end of the last century also didn't need much introduction. The adventure and love story of the magical teenagers deeply affected China in the 80s and 90s. Martin's Song of Ice and Fire had also been selling well for more than 10 years. Last year, it was made into a TV series by HBO in the United States, and it already had a large number of fans in China. Stephanie Meier's Twilight also didn't need any more praise. It was known as a magical masterpiece in the post-Harry Potter era. The romantic and poignant love story between a handsome vampire and a beautiful human girl in Aunt Meier's novel had changed the world's perception of vampires, which was previously unapproachable. In recent years, there was also Susan Collins's The Hunger Games trilogy swept all the major book awards in the United States and Europe since it was published in 2008. Even today, 4 years later, it was still the #1 Legion on the bestseller list. And this time, Yang Guo and Dongxin were preparing to secretly release Yang Piai's Fantasy Drifting, which was also a legend in fantasy novels. If we were to compare our online novels with the best-selling fantasy and fantasy novels overseas, there would definitely be a certain gap. After all, our online novels have only been developing for more than 10 years, and the market atmosphere is also not the same as that of the past. However, in terms of imagination, Zheng Yujie felt that Poplar Fruit's words made sense. Our online novels didn't fall behind. There were Eastern celestial heroes and Buddhas, and Western magic, knights, gods, and all kinds of sci-fi mechas and otherworldly continents. In just 10 years of development, the entire online novel was as bright as the stars and as gorgeous as the summer flowers. But here came the problem. Zheng Yujie frowned. Her left hand supported her right hand, and her right hand supported her chin. She asked, Poplar Fruit, this is a good idea. If it succeeds, we, as the first person to eat the crab, may be able to quickly seize the biggest piece of the cake. But have you thought about it? Where do we get the channels to sell our works? In the past, if we want to sell our works in China, we usually have to sign a separate agreement with foreign booksellers. Like Random House, these established booksellers are the first choice of authors. In the past, some large publishing groups in China did business research and wanted to merge with foreign publishing houses as our springboard, but they didn't succeed. Zheng Yujie said with some depression. Of course those big publishing houses in Dongxin have some channels to use, but do you think they are willing to work for others? This would be a very difficult problem. Even the publishing groups controlled by the state would hesitate. Poplar Fruit was not the only one who had the idea to sell Chinese books abroad. The country had this idea a few years ago. Most of the translators they gathered might not be as good as Yang Guo, but they were all successful seniors. Even if they were not as good as her, they would not be too far behind. But after a few years, they were still stuck at the same spot. It could be seen how difficult it was to achieve this. However, at this time, Poplar Fruit was working hard. His brain was working crazily. As early as when Zheng Yujie frowned and asked this question, he found the answer in an unremarkable little article in his memory. Yes, we have channels. Poplar Fruit punched his right fist on his left palm and said confidently, and it is a very, very big channel. What? Zheng Yujie asked in confusion. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, Create SPAC, translated as Amazon International Library. You will understand from the name that it is a publishing company under Amazon. However, unlike Amazon itself, it is engaged in the publishing of paperback books and electronic books. This was an independent publishing platform. Unlike traditional publishers, it did not do what publishers should do, but only built a sales platform for authors to sell directly to readers. To make a very vivid analogy, if publishers were to be compared to large supermarkets, they would collect the products, works, produced by many companies to sell to individual readers or bookstores. Then Amazon International Library would be the current popular Taobao in China. Whether you were a manufacturer or an individual businessman who wanted to open his own store to sell things, you could directly skip the supermarket link and sell your products directly on this platform. Therefore, no matter if you were a famous writer or a nobody, as long as you registered an account, you would be able to sell your works. Of course, whether it sold well or not, then it would really depend on the quality of the work. In reality, this library is only available to citizens of 12 countries, and among them, it does not include our country. Well, here, for the sake of the plot, let's just assume that our country is included. When it was sold, it could not only sell physical books. The platform would help to print and ship them. It could also sell electronic books, which could be read on Kindle devices or mobile devices with Kindle app installed. More importantly, it was not only Amazon, but also almost all mainstream online bookstores, such as Amazon Z, Electronic Harbor, eBay JD.com, Barnes & Noble, etc., would accept the sales. In this way, as long as the book was good, there was no need to worry about its sales. How did Poplar Fruit know about this? He himself often bought books from this place. There were many foreign language books, especially small languages, that could not be bought in bookstores. Poplar Fruit searched for a long time, and finally found them here. It showed that the stock was huge. Chapter 596. Wait a minute, Zheng Yujie said in surprise. Without the middleman, the author's income must be greatly improved, right? Zheng Yujie had been a deputy editor for several years. She naturally knew the tricks of the publishing house. After hearing Poplar Fruit's introduction, Zheng Yujie immediately grasped the key point. Poplar Fruit nodded and said, yes, the author could get 35% of the sales, but since 2 years ago, this ratio has increased to 70%. Was 70% high? There was no need to compare. As long as one had a little common sense, they would know that 70% was a terrifying attraction to the author. Zheng Yujie was even more aware that, let alone the harsher domestic publishing houses, some books were bought without royalties, and even if they were, it would only be 6% to 10%. Through large foreign publishers, The royalties an author could get were only 17%. Not everyone would be able to obtain 5% of the gold coins. It could be foreseen that such a high revenue model of 70% would be a huge blow to the traditional publishers. Zheng Yujie asked doubtfully. If there is really such a good platform, then it has broken the original market business model. There will definitely be traditional publishers who will unite to boycott it. How can they let it develop? Poplar Fruit was not very clear about this problem. After all, he only knew about the existence of this platform from the side. As for the hidden business struggle behind it, Poplar Fruit had not read about it. Of course, he was not interested in getting to the bottom of it before. Zheng Yujie could only speculate on her own. There may be two situations. First, this platform is too strong. Amazon is already an online sales channel that many publishers can't give up. They can't kill 1,000 of the enemy and lose 800 of their own to fight with Amazon. Second, this platform is not a big enough threat to the traditional publishers. Unless it is a talented author, he can directly publish a logical and smooth book without the supervision and sorting out of the publisher. There was once a foreign author who said in his book, "The more frequently a writer writes, the better he can write. But if the more we write, the more we don't realize that it is bad, then how can we improve?" What was the role of an editor? It was to carefully read the author's work and then give professional suggestions. This way, the final published work could not be criticized, and the author could improve from the constant revision. A book that was completely self-published was likely to have a lot of mistakes and shortcomings. As a reader, of course, they would be willing to buy a good book. A book that was reviewed by a mature publisher would naturally be their first choice. Poplar Fruit nodded and said, "It could also be both. Since the threat is not big enough, there is no need to worry too much and fight to the death." "Hey, don't imitate me." Zheng Yujie patted Yangguo's arm and pouted. Zheng Yujie was not a person who cared about these small details. Quarreling with Poplar Fruit was just a performance of joy and happiness. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said embarrassedly, "There are so many problems. Then is my idea just an armchair strategist?" It seemed that the self-publishing route would not work. "Who said that?" Zheng Yujie smiled and hugged Poplar Fruit's arm. She looked at Poplar Fruit sweetly and said, "On the contrary, your idea is very feasible, and maybe we can rewrite the history of the domestic publishing industry." "What do you mean?" Poplar Fruit was a little confused. "Didn't you say that self-publishing is not as good as traditional publishers? Are we self-publishing?" Zheng Yujie asked. "Did you forget what we were going to do in the beginning? Open a publishing house." Poplar Fruit felt that his action with Zheng Yujie was a little too intimate. He blushed and pulled his arm out of the amazingly elastic two peaks. Yes. Zheng Yujie did not care about Poplar Fruit's little action at this time. She smiled brightly and said, "We are traditional publishers, but since we don't have a better choice, why don't we break the rules and go the semi-self-publishing route?" "You mean?" Poplar Fruit's eyes lit up. Yes, Zheng Yujie wanted to use the identity of a publishing house to publish her own books through the self-publishing channel. In fact, Poplar Fruit had the same idea at first, but he was confused by the two models of self-publishing and traditional publishing that Zheng Yujie had mentioned. After all, he was not a professional in the publishing industry. What kind of business model was this? To give a very simple example, Zheng Yujie opened a publishing house, which also had an editorial department to review and proofread manuscripts, a technical department to typesetting, layout, and cover design, and other technical departments to handle some of the applications for publication, batch numbers, and other miscellaneous departments. However, the final printing, communication channels, and other parts could be omitted because they were all directly outsourced to Amazon International Library. In this way, Zheng Yujie's publishing house could save a lot of work. While streamlining the scale, it could also ensure the quality of the published books. This was something that pure self-publishing could not compare with. But don't be happy so early. Zheng Yujie poured cold water on Poplar Fruit, who was so naive that his blood was boiling. Now there are still two problems that we need to consider. First of all, how can we sell our books and not let our publishing house suffer a loss? Since it was a self-publishing platform, as mentioned before, the books on it were a mix of good and bad. It was very difficult to stand out from the vast number of works that were as good as The Starry Sky. Of course, there were also successful examples. The most representative was Amanda Hawkins. Amanda Hawkins. This Hawkins was, of course, not the godlike physicist Hawkins. Amanda Hawkins? Hawking, a young girl from the 80s in the United States, was like an inspirational story. In the beginning, she could only rely on ordinary service work, similar to community service, to support her dream of writing. However, she was rejected by the publishing house many times. Then in 2010, she self-published 9 ebooks including Superpower Tribe through Amazon International Library. In just a year, millions of copies were sold. Among them, the Superpower Tribe series was the best. It was even called a shocking work that combined the strengths of Twilight and The Princess Diaries. The movie rights were also sold last year, and the script was written by the screenwriter of District 9. Speaking of which, Zhang Yujie also knew about the Superpower Tribe trilogy. Dongxin did not manage to snatch the translation work from their old enemy, Yilin Publishing House. Otherwise, Zhang Yujie could have helped Poplar Fruit get the translation work for the trilogy. Chapter 597. Even if there were no lack of successful examples, how many glittering gold would still be drowned in the dirty sand? Even if Poplar Fruit was confident that he could translate a superior translation that was not inferior to the original work, who could guarantee that these translations would be dug out by readers from so many self-published works? This was only one of the problems that needed to be considered. Secondly, you have to know that the profits of traditional publishers are relatively high. They give authors a low royalty rate, and the sales of a good book after their operation are also very high. Even if we make money, we will definitely not earn as much as these publishers who have their own channels, Zhang Yujie said worriedly. If we make a certain achievement through this platform, and become the first to eat crabs, those traditional publishers will definitely swarm in if they see the profit. At that time, the results that we have worked so hard to achieve will become a wedding dress for others. Zhang Yujie shook her head and said, "There is no lack of examples of this in the country and abroad." Zhang Yujie considered things more comprehensively, and these were all things that Poplar Fruit could not think of. Thinking of this, Poplar Fruit also fell silent. His brain was spinning rapidly, thinking of a solution. Zhang Yujie suddenly laughed. She changed to a relaxed tone and said, "Okay, don't think about it. Look at your sad face. Actually, it's not that we can't do it. If everything had to be planned out at every step, we would have to stay in the plan forever. Only by bravely taking the first step can we have hope of success. Actually, your idea is already very good. Let's give it a try. Whether it succeeds or not, it will be a good experience." Zhang Yujie reached out and shook hands with Poplar Fruit, as if she had met her dearest comrade in a revolutionary war. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "You have the mentality to do big things. However, I actually thought of something just now. Although the first problem is related to operations, and I don't understand it very well, maybe I can give you a suggestion for the second problem." "Oh, what is it?" Zhang Yujie blinked her red phoenix eyes, and a look of surprise appeared on her pretty face. Poplar Fruit had given her enough surprises today. In the beginning, she had only brought up the idea of leaving Beijing. Even if she forced Poplar Fruit to give her an idea, it was just a joke with Poplar Fruit. However, she didn't expect that Poplar Fruit would really think of a way that no one had thought of before. She didn't think that a bookworm like Poplar Fruit would come up with a good solution for the company's management. However, Poplar Fruit still surprised her. "It's impossible to swallow the entire book export pie," Poplar Fruit said seriously. "I don't think even a big publishing group like Dongxin would dare to make such a big demand. But maybe we can try to seize as many foreign language copyrights of high-quality online novels as possible in the early stages, when no one is optimistic about them." "I understand." Zhang Yujie nodded. She definitely had thought of the key points of these operations without Poplar Fruit's reminder. In the middle and later stages, we can retain those outstanding translators. Poplar Fruit looked at the problem from his own point of view. "How? Sign those long-term contracts with them?" Zheng Yujie asked with some disappointment. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "No, it's useless to sign those long-term contracts. Talented translators won't just hand themselves over to a publishing house, and those who are willing to sign long-term contracts are the translators with average abilities. If they are the only ones, what's the point?" Zheng Yujie also knew that long-term contracts were useless. She knew it from Dongxin. Those who signed contracts with Dongxin were all young translators with little achievements. Dongxin didn't dare to use long-term contracts with real translation masters at all. For example, Professor Luolin translated for Dongxin in the capacity of collaborators. Dongxin had to be careful, for fear of making these masters unhappy if they didn't handle it properly. Poplar Fruit was the same. Dongxin once saw the potential of Poplar Fruit and wanted to sign Poplar Fruit, but Zheng Yujie was rejected when she mentioned it to Poplar Fruit. But Dongxin didn't dare to fall out with Poplar Fruit. Perhaps if Zheng Yujie wasn't in the middle, Dongxin would think that Poplar Fruit was too arrogant, but they definitely didn't dare to fall out with Poplar Fruit. After all, Poplar Fruit showed that his strength was not inferior to domestic translation masters at a young age. If they offended Poplar Fruit now, wouldn't they suffer the revenge of a master for decades to come? If it was only Poplar Fruit alone, it would be fine. But who knew how many translators Poplar Fruit's future students would be? Poplar Fruit finally said his thoughts. If we want to do it in the long run, then our publishing house must give the translators an appropriate commission. Commission? Isn't that unreasonable? Zheng Yujie exclaimed. From the last century to this century, the relationship between publishers and translators was very subtle. But one thing was certain. The importance of translators was far lower than the importance of the original author. Translators not only had a low status, but the remuneration they received couldn't be compared with the profits of publishers. As mentioned earlier, domestic translators and foreign translators were treated differently. Domestic translators were paid according to the number of words in a book, and the translator's name was hidden in a secret place in the final published book. In foreign countries, translators could get a commission, and the translator's name on the translated book was on the same level as the original author. Even if the translator's name was not as good as the original author's, it could still be placed in a prominent position on the cover of the book. What Poplar Fruit wanted to say was to break the norm and improve the status and treatment of translators. Our book export is different from the book import. Translators play a very important role in it. Speaking of English, as long as one had a certain foundation and good Chinese writing skills, he or she could translate English into Chinese. After all, it was not difficult to read English, and the translated language was his or her mother tongue. But not everyone who learned English could translate Chinese into English well. After all, the logic of English and Chinese was very different. It was very likely that the translated work would be awkward for foreigners. Translators and authors could enjoy the same commission. This was not only to increase the translator's income, but also to link the translator's income with the sales of his translated work. From another perspective, it was also an incentive for translators. Only by working hard to translate this book can I earn more money. Otherwise, my efforts will be more valuable. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 598. What Poplar Fruit said was only a suggestion. Zheng Yujie still needed to consider whether or not to implement it, and what kind of profit-sharing system would be between the publishing house, the author, and the translator. Zheng Yujie only had a preliminary idea. There was still a long time before she decided to resign and go south. At least, she would not resign before Poplar Fruit's translation of Young Pi's Fantasy Drifting was published. Unknowingly, the two of them had been chatting outside for a long time. Poplar Fruit and the others returned to the school to check on Fat Dragon's progress. Unexpectedly, as soon as they walked in, they found Fat Dragon in a video call with a man. The conversation was in full swing, but the jargon that came out of his mouth confused Poplar Fruit. Xiong Kahu, on the other hand, looked curiously behind Fat Dragon. The way he poked his head out and looked around repeatedly appeared in the camera. It was particularly funny. Isn't that Kai Simin? Zheng Yujie asked in surprise. Hearing Zheng Yujia's voice, Fat Dragon subconsciously closed the video chat interface. Poplar Fruit then saw that Fat Dragon was using Button's video chat. He didn't know if this guy had written a plugin that allowed Button, which originally had incomplete functions in the Comet system, to be able to video chat. Ha ha ha, you guys are back? Fat Dragon waved at Poplar Fruit and the others nervously. That's right. You've already finished writing a program after taking a detour. So fast. Yanghua was more straightforward. He chuckled. Copying someone else's program, of course it's fast, haha. Fat Dragon waved his hand proudly. No, Zheng Yujia wasn't fooled by Fat Dragon. She looked at Fat Dragon suspiciously and asked, "Were you talking to Kai Ximin just now? How do you know her?" Who do you know? Fat Dragon was terrible at lying. He even pretended not to know. This made Zheng Yujia feel that something was wrong. She walked past Fat Dragon and grabbed Fat Dragon's mouse. Fat Dragon was pushed back 2 steps by her. Zheng Yujia found Fat Dragon's chat interface and found Kai Ximin's name. You said you didn't know her. Isn't this the case? Let me see. I just added him. That's not right. How did you get his QQ number? The fruit is for me. Fat Dragon lied through his teeth. Poplar Fruit rolled his eyes and said, I don't even have his QQ. How can I give it to you? No, I mean I accidentally saw his number on Guazi's phone, so I asked him. Ha ha ha. Fat Dragon said with a dry laugh. Nonsense. Zheng Yujia caught Fat Dragon's loophole. She said sternly, don't use Poplar Fruit as an excuse. He doesn't even have Kai Ximin's contact information. Back then, Zheng Yujia was a tyrant in the circle of the second generation in the capital. When she was angry, her cold aura was as terrifying as a knife. Fat Dragon was so scared that his fat face turned pale. He sat paralyzed on the chair, and didn't even dare to breathe. Poplar Fruit felt that Zheng Yujia's reaction was a bit too big. He scratched his head and went forward to pull Zheng Yujia and said, Let's talk nicely. I'll ask him. When Poplar Fruit spoke, Zheng Yujia angrily moved aside. Poplar Fruit looked at Fat Dragon and frowned. He thought about it. In fact, he could roughly guess what was going on. Did you secretly look at Yujia's phone? Poplar Fruit asked. Or did you hack into her phone to find Kai Ximin's contact information? Fat Dragon secretly looked at Zheng Yujia. But Zheng Yujia ignored him and stood aside angrily with her arms crossed. Poplar Fruit sighed and said, Forget it. You don't have to answer me. I already know. Tell me, what's the point of you? I understand that you want to find Kai Ximin. You're all technical nerds. Then tell me directly. It's not like I won't give it to you. If you do this, won't everyone hate you? Have you forgotten what happened in junior high? In junior high school, Fat Dragon liked a girl, but he was very shy and didn't dare to talk to her. So he secretly used his hacking skills to hack into the girl's QQ account and directly added himself to her friend list. Then the two of them chatted well online. But one day he let it slip. The girl angrily blocked him, and they never contacted each other again. This incident hurt Fat Dragon. Poplar Fruit, as his best buddy, persuaded him for 2 months. After that, Fat Dragon didn't do anything to the people around him. Apologized to Yujia. Hurry up. Poplar Fruit's voice was a bit strict. Poplar Fruit was younger than Fat Dragon by a year, and Fat Dragon was also married. However, Fat Dragon still listened to Poplar Fruit's words. This was because he cherished such a good buddy from the bottom of his heart. I'm sorry. Fat Dragon stood up and walked in front of Zheng Yujia. He bowed deeply and said. Poplar Fruit also persuaded from the side. Yujia, let's just forget about this. Fat Dragon didn't mean any harm. He won't do it again. I'll forget about it this time. Zheng Yujia's face was a bit better. In fact, she was still a bit uncomfortable. If it wasn't for Poplar Fruit, who knows what kind of reaction she would have had. Don't forget, no matter how kind the second generation of officials were, they were still the second generation of officials. Their means of revenge would be more severe than ordinary people's. Zheng Yujia found an excuse to go back and rest. Poplar Fruit knew that the easing of their relationship wasn't something that could be restored in a short period of time. He laughed as he grabbed Kiki, who couldn't stop playing, and ordered her to go back with Zheng Yujia to take a nap. He could only hope that Kiki would be able to make Zheng Yujie a bit happier. When they returned to school, Poplar Fruit found Fat Dragon sitting on a chair like an obedient child listening to Xiongkuhu's lecture. Although Xiongkuhu didn't quite understand how Fat Dragon had managed to sneak a peek at Zheng Yujie's phone, he knew that it wasn't right to secretly touch a friend's things. Therefore, after Poplar Fruit left, he took over to tug on Fat Dragon's ear and lectured him. Xiongkuhu didn't read many books, but he was still able to memorize the teachings of his ancestors. Furthermore, he quoted from his own past experiences in his narration. The great principle of not betraying a brother's friendship was enough to make one's blood boil with excitement. Fat Dragon had an infatuated look on his face. He probably thought that it was a Wuxia novel again. Poplar Fruit stood at the door and watched for a while. He noticed a strange situation. It seemed like the relationship between Master and Fat Dragon had improved a lot. Thinking back to when the two of them first met, they were really like fire and water. Master wanted to kill him, and Fat Dragon's pants were still half drooping. Since when did Master stop looking at Fat Dragon with suspicion and disgust? One old and one young. Well, it should be said that one old and one fat. It was really a little interesting. Chapter 599. With Poplar Fruit and Fat Dragon around, Xiongkuhu went out for a stroll after chatting for a while. The old man didn't seem to have the habit of taking an afternoon nap. When he was free, he would walk around to see if the kids in the stockade had caused a ruckus during his absence. Poplar Fruit knew that Fat Dragon wasn't a bad person, so he didn't say anything else. After all, people also had dignity. If the same thing was brought up again and again, he would also feel impatient. However, Fat Dragon brought up the matter again. At that time, Yang Guo was still telling him about the teaching software she was going to use. QQ's video chat isn't enough, I need a lot of functions. First, and most importantly, we need to be able to split the screen so that the kids can see me on one side, and they can see the PowerPoint on the computer on the other side, right? Just like a real class. I know that our display screen doesn't look big enough, and it might not be able to meet the requirements of split screens. Actually, we also bought a projector this time. You can see how we can combine the two organically. How about we use the projector to play the image of my lecture? Then we can play the PowerPoint or other courseware on the display screen in front of the kids. Poplar Fruit. Fat Dragon was a little absent-minded. He looked at Poplar Fruit's expression and hesitated to speak. What's wrong? Poplar Fruit asked strangely. If there's anything, just say it. It's not like you to hesitate. Fat Dragon clenched his teeth and said, Fruit, what happened just now? Poplar Fruit waved his hand and smiled. All right, let's not talk about the past. Let it go. No, that's not what I meant. Fat Dragon said anxiously. I hacked into Zheng Yujie's phone. I really didn't want to secretly get the rookie's phone number. I just couldn't say it in front of her. Didn't you want to secretly get Kai Simin's phone number? But you still did. Poplar Fruit rolled his eyes and said, No matter why you did it, no matter how you did it, you shouldn't have done it. I did it because of you. Fat Dragon said anxiously. Hey, you don't understand. I'm just afraid that you'll be deceived by this woman. Wait a minute. Poplar Fruit said with a frown. What do you mean? I'm confused. What do you mean by for me? Fat Dragon said in a rare serious tone. When I first met Zheng Yujie, do you know what I was thinking? You did. Poplar Fruit said speechlessly. Didn't you say she was a great beauty? Yeah, she's a beauty, and her family is rich and powerful. What about you? Other than being a little handsome, your family background is average, and you already have a child. Tell me, Poplar Fruit, what did you do to make such an excellent girl throw herself at you? Fat Dragon said this, not showing any jealousy, but with a face full of sincerity. Don't use the word throw herself at me, okay? She and I are just ordinary friends. Poplar Fruit said this, even though he felt that it was a little against his will. TSK, you're so stubborn. She chased you all the way to the wilderness. Isn't that throwing herself at you? Fat Dragon shook his head and said, Anyway, I think it's a little unusual. So you hacked into her phone. Poplar Fruit wiped his cold sweat and looked at him speechlessly. Whether you believe it or not, I just wanted to protect you. I was afraid that you'd be deceived by Zhang Yujia. Fat Dragon said very seriously. What's there to deceive? I'm just a poor boy, Poplar Fruit said with a wave of his hand. You're poor? You're already a millionaire and you're still poor? Fat Dragon punched Poplar Fruit and said angrily. As a brother, I have to keep a lookout for you. Otherwise, how can I explain to Sister Ping and Aunt Jean Feng? Wait. Poplar Fruit looked at Fat Dragon suspiciously and said, Then did you also hack into Feng Beibei's phone? Not hers, but I checked some of her information. That girl's background is very simple, so there's nothing to be suspicious about. Fat Dragon shook his head and said. Poplar Fruit reached out and pinched Fat Dragon's neck and said angrily, I don't care if you want to protect me, but I won't allow you to lay your hands on my friends. Do you understand? This is a matter of principle. Fat Dragon felt the sternness in Poplar Fruit's eyes. He quickly raised his hand and swore, I understand, I won't do it again, I swear. Poplar Fruit let him go. Fortunately, Fat Dragon didn't hack into Feng Beibei's phone. Or else Poplar Fruit might really get angry. Do you know what I saw in Zhang Yujia's phone? Fat Dragon looked at Poplar Fruit strangely and said with a smile. Stop. Poplar Fruit frowned. He really wanted to slap this guy to death and said, I don't know and I don't want to know. Fat Dragon was blocked by Poplar Fruit and almost choked. This feeling of wanting to say something but not being able to say it was really depressing. He opened his mouth, but Poplar Fruit actually covered his ears and said angrily, Hey, I said you're not allowed to say it. Fat Dragon didn't give up and said, No, you must be very curious. Do you know what kind of background her family has? Poplar Fruit was really angry this time. He lifted Fat Dragon from the chair, and the 200-pound Fat Dragon couldn't resist at all. He was directly pressed against the wall by Poplar Fruit. Aya, this Cabotin. The style is too beautiful, Xiaohan is drunk, haha. Poplar Fruit was very serious this time. He stared at Fat Dragon's eyes and said, I said I don't want to hear it. Do you know why? Because I treat her as my good friend. No matter if she's good or bad, I'll tolerate it. Even if I can't tolerate it, I don't want you to tell me behind my back. This is the trust one have for my friends. Even if it's good? Fat Dragon asked timidly. No. Poplar Fruit was a little annoyed. He said, Do you even understand human language? Okay. Fat Dragon raised his hands in surrender and said, I was wrong, I won't say it, okay? Poplar Fruit put him down. However, Fat Dragon hesitated for a moment and couldn't help but say, Poplar Fruit, don't be angry. I won't say anything else, but seeing that she forgave me, can you let me say something fair for her? Poplar Fruit clenched his fists and finally loosened them. He sighed, turned his head to the side and said, Okay, say it. It's really fair. Fat Dragon was really going all out this time. He still wanted to say something against Poplar Fruit's anger. Zhang Yujia is a good girl. She's sincere to you. Fat Dragon took a deep breath, looked at Poplar Fruit and said sincerely, I don't know what's going on between you and that little junior, but I'm sure that if you miss out on Zhang Yujia, you'll regret it. Chapter 600. It was already afternoon, and the aroma of tea lingered in the air. The white smoke that rose into the air carried a sense of longing, like people sitting quietly in silence. It was as if the simple wooden table had already become a world of its own. It's time to go home. A cold but tactful voice broke the silence in the air. On the other side, the girl who only liked to wear plain clothes began to pull over her small bag. She tidied up the books that she had brought and gently put them into the bag. The girl's beautiful face was still as calm as before. However, compared to before, there was a trace of coldness that kept people away. This was perhaps the biggest change in Duan Xueqing over the past few days. Although her personality was still as taciturn as before, at least she would not deliberately ignore others. Duan Xueqing's progress had a lot to do with Pai Dinwan. In order to avoid her family's nagging, she sat alone in the tea house to read books. She had a man who was not annoying and did not nag her. Sometimes, when she saw his bright smile, her mood would be a little bit better. This seemed to have become a familiar scene that she experienced every day. In fact, Pai Dinwan did not come every day. Yesterday, he received an order to shoot a wedding dress outside. In his words, it was fortunate that this time, he was only shooting by the lake in the suburbs. If he went abroad to shoot, he would not know how many days and nights he would be able to come back. Duan Xueqing did not see him yesterday. Although her expression did not change, she inexplicably felt a trace of disappointment in her heart. Oh, time flies. Pai Dinwan stood up, twisted his waist, and bowed his head to Duan Xueqing with a smile. My unscrupulous boss did not come back. He gave me an empty afternoon again. Pai Dinwan's wedding dress photography company was actually opened by Pai Dinwan and his friends. Pai Dinwan had a small share, while his friends had a large share. There were only 2 people in the whole company. Pai Dinwan was the chief, and the only photographer. Even so, Pai Dinwan often did not have to go to work. Of course, the reason why it was so strange was that on one hand, Pai Dinwan's photography skills were good enough. On the other hand, it was because his friends were rich enough. Pai Dinwan's friends were all rich second generation. He was too lazy to run a company. The wedding dress photography company was set up by him on a whim, because the company was opened on his family's property, and the equipment was acquired from other bankrupt wedding dress photography companies. What he believed in was the business philosophy of don't open for half a year, but open for half a year. Usually, he would persuade Pai Dinwan to cherish his life and enjoy life in time, which meant that he should not accept small orders with small profits. Then he would invite his rich friends in his circle from time to time. Those rich young masters and young ladies were different from Duan Xueqing's family. Their families relied on real estate speculation to become rich. They did not care about small amounts of money at all. They did not care about spending millions of yuan for a romantic wedding photo shoot. By the way, do you have anything to do in the afternoon? Pai Dinwan lowered his head and asked Duan Xueqing. Looking at Duan Xueqing from top to bottom, the slightly raised bridge of her nose sat between the 2 curved long eyelashes. Her thin almond-shaped face was always charming, and her cold and icy skin was as delicate as jade. It seemed that no matter how one looked at it, this was a girl who made one's heart pound. Duan Xueqing raised her head and looked at Pai Dinwan in surprise. Her beautiful face, which had never revealed her inner fluctuations, was shocked by Pai Dinwan's sudden question. This silence lasted for a long time. Until Pai Dinwan was a little discouraged, Duan Xueqing suddenly lowered her head and continued to pack her small bag. A pleasant voice, which was as light as a breeze, brought her answer. Nothing. If one did not pay attention, perhaps the words of Duan Xueqing would really disappear after being blown by the wind. However, Pai Dinwan was paying close attention to Duan Xueqing at this moment. Hearing her words, Pai Dinwan's thick eyebrows trembled slightly. He seemed to be bursting with joy, but he suppressed it. Do you like to look at photos? Pai Dinwan struck while the iron was hot and said, how about I take you to look at the wedding photos I took? Going out for a walk once in a while can also change your mood. To be honest, although Pai Dinwan and Duan Xueqing had been sitting face to face in this tea house for a long time, the 2 of them had very little conversation. At most, they would say goodbye to each other before leaving. Pai Dinwan would sometimes mention his schedule. That was all. Today, the 2 of them seemed to talk more than usual. After hearing Pai Dinwan's invitation, Duan Xueqing hesitated for a while before nodding and agreeing. Not daring to push his luck, Pai Dinwan finally gave Duan Xueqing his address. At noon, Duan Xueqing went home for lunch as usual. She even had a good afternoon nap. Pai Dinwan became the one who was restless. He didn't eat lunch, but went back to the tea house and began to clean the dust that had accumulated because he opened the door but didn't receive customers. These pieces of glass are dirty. There's so much dust. Pai Dinwan wiped the wedding photos that were hung on the wall for publicity. A few finger marks immediately appeared on the glass cover. He shook his head and quickly found a wet rag to wipe them. At around 1 o'clock, Pai Dinwan was really hungry, so he ordered takeout. However, if he ate in the tea house, even if it was very light Jiangnan cuisine, there would still be a smell left. Okay, I'll do my best. Pai Din-1 held the lunchbox and squatted on the curb outside the tea house to eat. I look like a migrant worker. Sa. After cleaning up, Pai Din-1 returned to the tea house. At first, he sat upright on the sofa with his hands on his knees. He turned his head and looked around to see if there was anything wrong with the place. It's 2 o'clock. It's 2 o'clock. Pai Din-1 straightened his back. I'm a little sleepy. It's 2:30. Pai Din-1 quivered, and some vague sleepiness disappeared. It's 3 o'clock. Pai Din-1 began to walk back and forth in the tea house. He couldn't sit down. Another half an hour passed. Pai Din-1 leaned against the front desk for decoration. His head was pillowed on top of it, and he looked at the white wall with melancholy. He sighed in his heart again and again. Ding-ling-ling, that's not right. It's not a sigh. Pai Din-1's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. He quickly stood up, rubbed his stiff cheeks and looked out of the glass door. He saw an ancient bicycle wobbling on the green belt path, avoiding pedestrians. In fact, there were no pedestrians, no bicycles, and nothing else. All he could see were her thin and weak shoulders, her long hair that reached her waist, and her cold and melancholic face. She's here. Chapter 601. Here. Pai Din-1's face was filled with a happy smile. He walked out of the door and waved at Duan Xueqing. Under the scorching sun, Duan Xueqing only wore a small sun hat. When she got out of the car, above her slightly panting cherry lips, her small nose and forehead covered by her bangs were fine beads of sweat. Her delicate appearance made people want to hold her in their arms and wipe her tired sweat with a clean towel. This fool, why didn't Lu Yuan call me? He even rode here. Sigh, how stupid. This was Pai Din-1's monologue in his heart. He naturally didn't dare to be rude to a beautiful woman, especially Duan Xueqing, a girl who used coldness to cover up her thick defenses. Duan Xueqing nodded gently at him as a greeting. Then she parked the car under the shade of a tree and locked it. Then, she carried her small bag and walked towards Pai Din-1. It was a hot summer day, and the inside of the wedding photography shop was another world. The turned-on air conditioner made the heat wave outside a thing of the past. However, Duan Xueqing wasn't used to the sudden change in temperature. As soon as she came in, she couldn't help but shiver. Is the temperature too low? Pai Din-1 resisted the urge to take off his coat and put it on Duan Xueqing. On the one hand, it seemed a little too rash to do so. On the other hand, Pai Din-1 wasn't wearing a coat either. Pai Din-1 found the remote control and increased the temperature of the air conditioner a little. With Duan Xueqing's personality, there was no need to be polite between the two of them. Before Pai Din-1 could even introduce her, Duan Xueqing walked to the small corridor where the wedding photos were displayed and looked at them. This was taken a while ago. Bai Tingyuan followed behind Duan Xueqing and said with a smile, some of them were taken in 2010, and these few were taken at the beginning of 2011. The ones that came after that weren't hung up. My boss was too lazy. Pai Din-1, you're not any better, are you? Pai Din-1's photography skills were really good. His composition was very interesting. It was not like those photo studios where the couple stood in front of the background. It seemed that every photo had a story of the lovers. This was taken in the Huerd vast grassland. Pai Din-1 saw Duan Xueqing's eyes move to a photo, and she was reluctant to look away, so he introduced it with a smile. Although it was a grassland, the background of the photo was not an endless sea of grass. It should be a stream in the grassland. A herd of horses, although they were only reared by the herdsman, if there was no close-up, the difference could not be seen, were pacing by the stream. The newlyweds were sitting on the back of a tall white horse at the moment. The bride, who was also wearing a white wedding dress, opened her veiled arms and leaned into her husband's arms with a sweet and intoxicated expression. This set of classic Titanic poses was sublimated in another scene. The gentle light in the foreground and the background that was not blurry, the grassland, the stream, and the horses set off the romance. Bai Tingyuan's clever choice of angle highlighted the beauty of the bride, and also concealed the groom's appearance that was not very eye-catching even if he had put on makeup. Pai Din-1 pointed at the photo and smiled slightly proudly. This photo is also a milestone. Originally, many customers did not believe in my skills. Since the 5th month of the opening, when I went to the grassland to take this photo, no one has questioned me anymore. To be precise, in the circle of Pai Din-1's friends, many people knew Pai Din-1 because of this photo. Later, Pai Din-1's friends decided to do a big deal. Who asked a large portion of the rich to be ugly. Although they weren't ugly, they weren't that good either. They looked for other wedding dress companies to take the photo, but the photo was simply Beauty and the Beast, which made them feel happy. I'll show you the photo albums later. They are all good photos that I have collected. I have never shown them to anyone else. Pai Din-1 walked past Duan Xueqing into the lounge inside. That photo is a milestone, but it is not a masterpiece. There are many photos taken later that are better than this one. Pai Din-1 was wearing a blue and white striped shirt, and the sleeves were rolled up to the elbows. When he was talking about the photography that he was good at, Pai Din-1 bloomed with indescribable confidence. Looking at his excited look at the moment, it was completely different from the calm look he had when he was drinking tea with Duan Xueqing in the tea house. However, it seemed to be more charming this way. In fact, Duan Xueqing did not say a word when she came into the shop. Her eyes wandered between the photo and Pai Din-1 from time to time. Although she didn't say anything, she didn't have the cold aura of 1,000 miles away from her body. Her bright and beautiful eyes revealed an undetectable fluctuation. This photo was taken in Nihon country last March. The theme is cherry blossoms. Many customers like this kind of romance. This year, there are 2 orders with this theme. Well, this one is also good, right? It was a snow scene. At that time it was cold and the bride wore little. However, it was to highlight this kind of love. There's also this one. It was taken at the bottom of the sea. The equipment was borrowed. This is the most challenging photo I've ever taken. At that time, I took it over and over again. It took me 3 days to get this photo that I'm satisfied with. It is definitely much worse than this one in the Maldives. However, this difficult process is still memorable, haha. Duan Xueqing sat quietly next to Pai Din-1. While looking through Pai Din-1's collection of works, she listened to the story behind each romantic or warm wedding photo. She said very little. At most, she took the initiative to ask, "What about this one?" or agreed with a "hmm." The 2 were quite close. Pai Din-1 could smell the delicate fragrance of her hair. He could not help but feel a little nostalgic and intoxicated. For people who were getting married, wedding photos symbolized the purity and romance of love. It also symbolized the beginning and expectation of marriage. However, for Duan Xueqing, she would not think so much about the profound meaning. However, it was really beautiful, so she could not help but look at it again and again. Perhaps it was also a dream. Time passed too quickly. Duan Xueqing only did it for 2 hours before she self-disciplined cycled home. She did not miss it too much, nor did she promise to go on another date. She left Pai Din-1 alone in the shop to reminisce. Buzz buzz. His phone rang. Pai Din-1 sat on the sofa. He took a look at it and frowned slightly. Hello. I made some progress. Why are you rushing me? Let me tell you, you can't rush this. This girl is not ordinary. Although she doesn't talk, she has a high IQ. It took me half a month to get close to her. You can't treat her like those idiots in the past, right? Okay, I got it. I will be faster. Give me 3 months. 2 months should be enough, right? Ciao. Let me tell you, it really can't be faster. Either you believe me, or you get someone else. That's it, bye. With a parabola in the air, the phone flew to another sofa with a sigh of annoyance. It bounced up and fell. Chapter 602. It was as if nothing had happened. In the afternoon, Fat Dragon continued to hang out with Kai Si-min, his soulmate whom he had finally found. Both of them were technically obsessed, but Fat Dragon was slightly more inclined towards writing programs, while Kai Si-min was slightly more inclined towards hardware. However, both of them were unwilling to admit defeat in their weakness, so they spent the whole afternoon arguing. Zheng Yujie was unhappy at noon. Although she had forgiven Fat Dragon, she still felt a little uncomfortable. She simply went for a walk with Kiki, who had just woken up in the afternoon. She also brought along Gold, who could only tuck its tail between its legs in the Hmong stockade village. Poplar Fruit acted as if nothing had happened. He looked at Fat Dragon's progress for a while, and then looked at his daughter's innocent smiling face. Then he carried the two Meowdow that were half a person's height, and looked for a piece of wood to compete with. Tomorrow was Zheng Yujia's birthday. Logically speaking, he would celebrate it with Zheng Yujia tonight. However, with Poplar Fruit's skill, he might not be able to carve a cute rabbit even if he was given another week. Now the piece of wood in his hand was like that. Its long ears had fallen off twice, but he still persevered to fix the ears. As a result, the rabbit's head became a human shape. There was no other way. Zheng Yujia's birthday gift could only be made up later. Although he had told Zheng Yujia before, and the girl had said that she did not care, he had to admit that it was a pity. However, after Fat Dragon's words, did Poplar Fruit really not change? Yonggua's natural expression was just a facade he was putting on. Fatty Dragon's words had set off waves in his heart. Even when he was carving wood with the knife, he wasn't calm. He almost cut his own hand several times. This was rare for Yonggua, who could control all the muscles in his body. If Fat Dragon could see Poplar Fruit's inner world, or hear his inner monologue, then Fat Dragon would definitely hit his head against the wall. He would even have the thought of dying. Yes, Poplar Fruit did not fall in love with someone else because of Fat Dragon's words. This guy with low EQ even dug himself into a dead end. Zheng Yujia was so good to him that it was hard to find another girl who would be willing to sacrifice herself for Poplar Fruit. However, this could not be. In recent days, the uneasiness in Poplar Fruit's heart finally broke out. Poplar Fruit's EQ was not high, but he was very clear about what he wanted. When Lu Yunran was still Poplar Fruit's girlfriend, Poplar Fruit loved Lu Yunran deeply. Duan Xiueqing, a girl who was several times prettier than Lu Yunran, quietly became his confidant for 4 years. Poplar Fruit still only treated her as a junior who needed to be taken care of. If Kiki's incident had not happened, Poplar Fruit and Lu Yunran would have been an ordinary love story. With their characters, it would not be a problem for them to live a long life without illness or pain. However, Wu Yu accidentally broke in and changed Poplar Fruit's life. However, a leopard could not change its spots. Even after Poplar Fruit had a daughter, his personality was still so fucked up. Yes, Xiao Han admitted that it was Xiao Han's initial setting that was fucked up. Until now, Poplar Fruit still clearly understood what he pursued in love. That's right, he wasn't purely pursuing love anymore. As a father, he had to shoulder the responsibility of a father. Love and family could only complement each other. They couldn't become a conflict because Chi-Chi couldn't afford to wait. Poplar Fruit's initial impression of Feng Beibei and Zheng Yujia were actually more or less the same. Feng Beibei was cute, kind, and beautiful like a fairy. She was the pure dream of all boys. Guanguan Jujiu is in the river continent. A gentle and graceful lady is a gentleman's dream. Poplar Fruit was the same. When he saw Feng Beibei by the lake, his heart was moved. When Zheng Yujia first appeared, she had the appearance of a domineering older sister. She only lacked a whip to complete the transformation of a queen. Zheng Yujia, who was both beautiful and intelligent, had an ambiguous relationship with Poplar Fruit from the beginning. It would be a lie to say that Poplar Fruit was not moved. After all, Poplar Fruit was also a man. The change in his feelings for Feng Beibei happened when Poplar Fruit was tutoring Feng Beibei. Originally, it was just a feeling of love and could not help but want to interact more. However, because Feng Beibei was sincerely good to Kiki, and because Feng Beibei and Poplar Fruit spent a happy time together in the teacher's dormitory, Poplar Fruit truly understood his own heart. It was not just a feeling of love, it had turned into love. Before this, it was not impossible for Poplar Fruit and Zheng Yujia to be together. This possibility was even greater than Poplar Fruit and Feng Beibei. It was a pity that Zheng Yujia had a younger brother who cheated his sister. Zheng Timing successfully made Poplar Fruit mistakenly think that Zheng Yujia already had a fiancé, and Poplar Fruit wanted to build a complete family for Kiki, a family that was not so unstable. Therefore, the bud that had not yet sprouted was killed by Zheng Timing's lie. When Zheng Yujia explained it clearly, it was already a bit too late. At that time, Poplar Fruit had already recognized Fang Beibei's existence. Poplar Fruit and Fang Beibei were only left with a confession. Zheng Yujia's efforts, such as rushing to confess and forcefully kissing Poplar Fruit, were not useless. However, Poplar Fruit thought about it carefully and realized that his identity, not his birth, was an unmarried father. There was a huge conflict with Zheng Yujia's family. In addition, Poplar Fruit's accumulated guilt towards Zheng Yujia in his heart made Poplar Fruit rationally choose not to go deeper. Now Poplar Fruit himself had walked into a dead end. Fat Dragon's words woke him up from his dream. He was surprised to find that Zheng Yujia's love for him was not something that he could stop at will. And he seemed to like the feeling of being loved a little. Is he sure he was not secretly happy? This was not right. He and Fang Beibei were in the last step of becoming lovers, the so-called observation period that Fang Beibei mentioned. How could he fall in love with another woman? Poplar Fruit had never thought about having a dragon and 2 phoenixes, or giving up on both his left and right hands. The 2 women accepted it all. That was a web novel, but Yang Guo was facing reality. No one knew about Poplar Fruit's dilemma, and he walked to the other extreme in this dilemma. He could not go on like this. If Fat Dragon knew that he had made Poplar Fruit think it through, and that he was preparing to gradually draw a line between men and women with Zheng Yujia to ensure that friends could not cross the line, he would really apologize with his life. Who asked him to be so self-righteous? Of course, Poplar Fruit did not immediately draw a line. He would take note of Zheng Yujia's feelings. Because although it was impossible to be lovers, Poplar Fruit still cherished Zheng Yujia's existence as a friend. P.S. This chapter is an explanation. I see that many readers don't like Fang Beibei. Little Han wants to say that it's because they don't understand Fang Beibei. I haven't been paying enough attention to her recently. After all, Little Han's skills are not enough. PS2. Recently I read a good book, The Age of Literature and Art. Many readers might have read it, but Xiao Han would still recommend it here. It is really a good book. Although it is a rebirth, it is very realistic. It is not overly YY and will turn white in sleep. Xiao Han could not keep up with the writing. In addition, I really like the portrayal of Fan Bingbing in the novel. It brought the young Fan Bingbing to life. Highly recommend it. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.